What's up, everybody? This is Carrick with ACG, and I am here with Johnny for the Best Gaming Podcast, 505, to discuss a bunch of stuff. We're going to discuss Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, more impressions on it, Avowed, the reviews breakdown, Sony event. What else? A bunch of user questions, probably a tech suggest or two. Sony's event, like I said, some more layoffs, unfortunately. The Sony events might be one of the more interesting things. Like there was some
I think it ended up being more significant than usually the state of play.
Yeah.
They did show a bunch of
They showed a bunch of stuff. They actually showed the new like Until Dawn kind of style of game, which I'm actually interested in too.
Until Dawn in space.
Yeah, was that what it was? Was in space?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, I'm all for that. I'll jump into that. We are still using Discord for today's. We're gonna try it one more time. It worked pretty well last time. There were some odd issues on my side, and then we had a power outage again, and we have snow a bunch today. Hopefully, we don't have a power loss today. Everything should be set up. Shouldn't cause any issues. Looking around here, who knows? We'll just have to see. Is anybody? The reason why the poll is up is because we have a bunch of different developers who are delaying games for GTA 6. And the question came up yesterday, what would happen if all these guys delayed and then GTA 6 delayed? And so you have all these people waiting, it's like waiting for the prom, everybody waiting for the girl to ask, and then she just decides not to go or gets mono and can't go, and everybody's sitting there. And now there's just like 50 guys at the prom, all of them staring at each other going, we're at the wrong place at the wrong time. So I was just wondering what people's thoughts are on that. Like it seems interesting to me that we haven't got any data and they just announced that they're still on track technically, but dude, on track, doesn't necessarily mean it's for sure going to work out. And I do know I have a green thing here, but my 4090 is acting up today. Oh, I need to update the drivers too. Did you see that there's a new driver update? Did you get it?
No, I haven't checked it out.
Yeah. I got a Windows update and I got a driver's update, and I took a chance, man. I did the Windows update, worked fine, but the driver, dude, I feel like it. I feel like anytime anything ever that you update, you're just taking your life into your own hands these days. Whether it be security issues or
there's always a chance that something. It could just change a device and then boom, your sound is not working.
Well, look at the NVIDIA update. They completely borked recording. So for a while, recording was locked when you chose 1080p. It would have a certain bit rate, and it was 50, which I'm still not happy with, but whatever. Then it unlocked, and for like four driver sets, you could do whatever you wanted. And I was like, oh, thank God. So I can go to 80, I can go to 90, I can do what I want when I'm trying to hit a high bit rate per frame recording. And then the last two dropped to 32. So now, if you're recording, it drops to 32. You can switch to AV1. Guess what doesn't use AV1? Every editor in the world. Premiere doesn't use it. So all you end up doing is wasting hours transferring all that data over. It's an absolute disaster. Javier, what's up? Creative Monster says GTA is going to get delayed. Just my feeling. ACG, great Avowed review. Thank you very much. Yeah, the Avowed, we're going to talk about those. Avowed doing better than, well, I don't know what I thought, but I mean, I guess I would say better than I thought. It was at 81 or 82 on OpenCritic with a huge number of recommends, which was confusing people that there's a score that's a number and then a recommend. And people need to remember that the recommend is taking your verbal stuff, like mine. Mine isn't a number. Buy isn't a number.
Oh, so right.
You have the verbal.
Your rating doesn't go into the numerical.
It can't, yeah. I mean, you could do 25% for each. You could say buy is 25 or like 75 and above. But, dude, at that point, it'd be pretty weird. Like, you'd have it'd be a pretty odd one. Oregon Fresh, what's up, man? Hope you're doing well. Ransom, Dodger, thank you, everybody, for jumping in. I absolutely appreciate it. If you guys get a chance, and this did help on the last video, so I want to implore you, when we're done, please leave a comment at the end. I'm going to remind you guys again, that kind of stuff does dramatically help the channel, pretty surprisingly, actually, and thumbsing this up when we're live. What have you been playing there, Johnny? I was going to call you Jonathan, but I'm not going to.
Jonathan.
What have you been playing?
Well, I have been playing a game under NDA that we'll talk about when we can. That's been super fun, super exciting, and it's kind of giddy, like to not tell people, and I'm just like there behind the scenes, doing something other people are doing. Anyway, so that's been fun. Outside of that, though, not too much. I tried a little bit of Citizen Sleeper 2, and I really enjoyed the writing in it, but the gameplay was not for me. The whole thing with going to the markers and then doing the dice rolls and stuff just kind of got pretty old very quickly. So
Yeah.
just not my type of thing. But it's cool. I'm giving a try to some more of these like narrative or like visual novel type
Right.
stuff.
Right.
Now
Nothing
that
wrong
I'm a
with
bit
that.
better at paying attention to reading and things like that. But yeah, outside of that, not too much, honestly. Just chilling out a little bit this week.
With Citizen Sleeper and those kind of games, I think they work great on like a Legion. If I'm sitting back, just listen to some music, vibing. On a big screen, at some point, the screen real estate is 90% text. And I think the human brain starts seeing this giant text and goes like, I just don't have enough going on. Or not the human brain, some people's brains, including my own at times, can definitely steer you a little weird. It's just all about the HUD, the UI, and then what's going on in it. And in that game, it's just a lot of reading, man. A lot.
Yeah.
And it's dystopian, so it's a lot of, not necessarily happy reading. It's like, wah, wah, everything's bad. Eeyore from fucking Winnie the Pooh kind of thing in a cyberpunk world. Brandon Martin,
yeah, there is a
$5
lot. No, just to confirm what you said, there is a lot of reading. Even just to get through the introduction, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I agree. Brandon Martin, $5 super chat. It's been a great week. My Eagles dominated the Chiefs, and I'm having a great time with Avowed. It's really good. You bought the Eagles? Congratulations. Sorry, I just love to tease that. Love to tease the sports ownership stuff. Man, yeah, we got this new quarterback. We're going to be able to train him up. It's like, dude, are you there? But I do get the excitement. I'm glad it did well for you. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, so hopefully they'll do better later on. We'll just have to see. Don't necessarily watch a ton of NFL, but occasionally I tune in. More of a UFC guy. Let's see. Alp says, how y'all doing? I think we're doing good. Javier says, Johnny's secretly playing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Yeah, you got me.
PK says, watch Rockstar announce a delay and then drop a release date after a bunch of games also get announced. The game's big enough for them to be trolls like that. Yeah. Luckily, they're not. They seem to be cognizant of... I think they'd inform us if they knew exact date. I think they would probably rather have the entire industry be successful. Grudge, I tried the first game and I can appreciate it, but it's not for me. Yeah, I know what he's talking about. Citizen Sleeper, man. I like those games, but you got to be in a certain mood. It's like a Dark Souls.
Right? Yeah, definitely.
I saw early in our Discord, this is the first time in like 6 months I've had a full, well, not full. It was 6 hours of sleep. So that was good. I was going to say a full night's sleep, but for me, that's
for you.
Yeah. And so when I woke up, there was just a bunch of chatting and people were saying that they're really enjoying the lack of Souls style games. That it seems like, we're getting other stuff for a while, and like not every new action game has to be that kind of stuff. But it was the reason why it was discussed is because what we're going to talk about next is a Sony event, which showed like Onimusha. It showed one or two other games, with some of them having sort of that Dark Souls slant to them. But I think they were excited that there were other things shown that didn't seem to feel that way, and they were sort of excited to be able to possibly jump into those without the knowledge that it's going to be a crunch fest for a while. Sometimes that's just
hard. And it's good to see a lot of these also have easy modes or different accessibility.
That's true.
So that more people can get into them.
Yeah,
I'm not one of those guys who like criticize when they put an easy mode. I don't really think it's any problem.
I don't think it's either problem either way. If they don't want to have one, no issue. If they do want to have one, no issue. What I have an issue with, and we talked about it last week, is I don't want them to like ask people if they should. Because the developer, if they want to put it in, they're going to do the time. They need to do the time to balance it. and so forth.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's not as easy as just turning down HP or something.
yeah, definitely. Sector, what's up, buddy? A long-time watcher. I've seen you a bunch around. Very unwell in bed with poorly soup chicken. Poorly made, or is poorly a slang? I hadn't heard about that. Says, but got my Portal and playing Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Grudge says my father's 64 and plays games quite often. I'm glad they have easier modes because he can still enjoy those games. Yeah. You know what's funny, though, man? I don't know. Do you think your skills are going to drop off? As I've gotten older, if skills have dropped off, I've gotten better for whatever reason. I'm assuming it's because I play a lot, and then I use experience of past games. And I think that people forget that there is a lot of experience. There's a lot of like little goofy experiences you can use. And if you think about it, you might do okay. Do you think when you become 55, 60, you're going to still be playing Dark Souls games? If I said Elden Ring 11 is coming out, okay, you're not that young.
I think so, because so much of those games is anticipation as opposed to reaction. So
True.
when you look at it, when you're doing really well in those games, it's usually because you fully expect what's coming your way,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore you have a toolkit to respond to everything,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just having a super good reaction that
Agreed.
you see like unknown things, but you're still able to like immediately react to it. Some people are like that. I am not, even like now or 10 years ago. So I've just never been that.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's always been about developing the anticipation and the knowledge, and that really won't change. And in fact, I think, like you said, it just gets better. The more games you learn, right? The more skills or learning curves you go through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Colton Eastwood says, "Look at all these guitars." Yeah. Yeah, definitely a lot of guitars in Johnny's past. I was noticing, probably because you and I talked about it, it popped up in my Google, but I was starting to get a ton of different, basically cheaper guitars being made by some of the more expensive companies for beginners. And I don't know why this was popping up, but yesterday alone in my Android, you go swipe left on your Android and you get the Google News that's curated for you. There's like 3 separate companies that were trying to make guitars that, maybe it's YouTube, maybe it's the sort of look at me generation or something. And that's not a negative. I'm saying where you can be seen and doing this stuff. That I saw companies that I think are fairly middle to high starting to go low, which is sort of reminds me of headphones, where it used to be Sens fairly high, and then they had some shit low ones, and then they realized, oh, there's people out there that only have $70. But if they only have $70, wouldn't we rather have the $70? Well, let's try to figure out a way to go there. And it feels like with guitars and instruments, you're starting to get that way. I had Takedown one time try to explain to me why drums were expensive. So what I was asking him is, in a guitar, you get this finely made thing, some artisan with his pinky up, he's probably chopped his middle finger off in some kind of soul deal, and he's making these guitars, and people will listen to him 600 years from now and go like, actually, that's a Carrick Special Blaster 107 that only had 3. There's always those guys. But with drums, I've always been confused. And Takedown was explained in one of them was the tension, the torsioners that keep the skins flat.
Yeah.
They're like the better and made of a certain type of, material that doesn't like stretch, but also doesn't end up tonally affecting the drum, all this kind of stuff. And I was surprised how much shit, went into that too. I mean, obviously, it would be, but it's always cool to hear about instruments like that.
Yeah, I think for guitars, the manufacturing chains have gotten so good that you can get like 90% of the quality of a full price.
Yep.
With, like you said, like a fourth of the price.
Yep.
You can get super close, and then the difference becomes, maybe you got like deluxe pickups and slightly better materials,
holding its tuning better, for a longer period.
Yeah, hold its tuning a bit better. But yeah, drums are tricky, right? Because they have so much stress onto them as well, just because of how you hit them, compared to a guitar where you're just like pushing down strings. It's much less like friction and stress. stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Colton says most all guitars and budget price are pretty amazing over the last 10 years. Yeah, I would agree. I've jumped in a couple times. Oh, did somebody say something about AI voice? Oh, shit, we dropped out. Did I hit the wrong? Oh, you know what? Hang on. We'll come back. I think I made the window minimized. There we are. Sorry about that. Colton was saying that, yeah, the guitars have dropped in price, and it is great. It's cool to see all that kind of stuff. It's cool to see the ability for people to jump in. You probably jumped in here thinking we were going to talk about games, but this is Johnny and I when we don't catch up for a little bit, so that's why we were talking about that stuff. Next up, I'm going to read Jacob's super chat, and then we'll get to the actual Sony event. On a paid staycation this week, spent the week playing Avowed, building my fiancée a new PC. She went with an AMD GPU, and I'm very impressed with it. Very cool, man. I wish you all the luck, and more so, I wish you luck with the drivers, because if there's any problem that I have had with AMD stuff is compatibility in driver sets, and that seems to be the majority of complaints that we see with the GPU in particular. So hopefully that works. Glad to see somebody else get back into PCs. Tell her that ACG congratulates her, and then buy her the hardest Dark Souls ever, and tell her it's super easy, and then get her to hate gaming forever. Speaking of hating gaming, let's talk about Sony. First of all, dude, state of plays. How long is it going to be, man? How many more times will Sony continually get people to show up for that?
Like, and how many times are people going to be like, dude, we're getting Bloodborne?
It's crazy. And when Bloodborne finally does happen, if we ever see it, it'll probably be a big deal, and then people will go right on from there wanting the next big thing. It's like, it's like once that happens, people will be like, oh, right, man. And then, well, why aren't we getting a new Shadow of the Colossus or whatever? And you're like, here we go. It's always the next big thing, right? It's always that. And Bloodborne, Sony knows. And they've stated pretty clearly, I mean, if you look at the team that built it, that team's gone. The From Software guys said that they own it. But then, Sony and From are talking about like a purchase of the parent company. So I don't know where it's going, but this event, if you go into the Sony State of Plays, the Microsoft, whatever they're called, what are Microsoft's called? Developer Direct, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then Nintendo Direct. If you go into them not expecting much, I think you can come away being fairly happy with what you see. People are talking right now. Tides of Annihilation looks okay, but the name is terrible. He said we still saw a great this Colton at State of Play regardless, just not the first party games. Yeah, I actually think that, I know people are interested in Tides, Onimusha, definitely people interested in that. I think I need to hold off on those until we get closer to them. It's just one of those things. You're never quite sure exactly what you're going to get. But what I saw, they looked interesting. Some dates, some not dates. I think the other big thing to go into these is like understanding that the dates aren't solid anymore. Like we saw a couple, but
we saw a couple. There was this game called Lost Soul Aside.
Yeah, Lost Soul Aside, dude.
Aside, weird name too.
Yeah,
weird name.
What'd you think of it? What you saw, at least?
A little bit of a weird Devil May Cry sci-fi-ish vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it could be interesting, and this one does have a date for the 30th of May,
30th
PS5
of May.
PC.
30th of May.
30th of May.
That's exciting.
And honestly, I thought that looked interesting, but it's hard to, when so many of these games have this like action combat, and they show just cuts and not like a segment of someone playing continuously. It's hard to tell like what's it actually going to be. Is it going to be Souls? Is it going to be, Wukong? What are we looking at? I'm having a bit of trouble tracking even Onimusha, honestly. I'm not sure.
Yeah, either or by. And I think the big thing too is that, and this is the honest truth, man. Normally you would look at a trailer and go, that's CGI, or you'd look at a trailer and go, I understand where they're going with it. You would look at this and that. Then we started getting games that they were better than their trailers by a good amount, which was not unheard of, but far less. And I think Guardians is probably my best example. Guardians of the Galaxy previews were horrendous. It didn't look fun. It looked like everything you don't want in a third-person, action team-based game. The game turns around and turns out to be really good. I would say for me, Avowed was that way. Avowed's trailers were fucking horrendous. It does not translate the combat in the trailer, and they did make some changes even from the last preview that I played to this one, which I thought were some tremendous changes. But we're starting to see these titles that they don't preview well, and I don't exactly know why. I think it is feel, but I don't know if it's the trailer or what, or you don't get the idea of what the game is. You're like, okay, what part of this game am I going to be interacting with the most? Maybe they're just poorly made trailers. Maybe they don't have the time to do them. Mohammed gave me a SAR 25 super chat. The latest state of play showing great games, but missing Bloodborne remastered or something. Yep. We'll get to it. You'll be 200. We'll get to it. Somebody just mentioned something I want to talk about, though, and that is the best game of the Sony show. So first of all, everybody, what's your favorite game that you saw at the show? If you watched the show, mine is, as I like to call, Returnal Anal 2. Return Anal 2. So Return Anal 2. I am a big fan of them. Housemark. They're awesome. They know what they're doing with games. They're a little like Yakuza, where you understand the basics. Yakuza is much closer to formula, but I cannot wait for that. I think it was great that they sort of retired the Returnal character. I think that arc didn't need more, and instead we get this guy looking up at a giant, goatsy in the sky. Sorry, I'm in one of those moods. Looks up at a giant black hole in the sky, and basically there's a kind of supernatural / alien enigmatic black hole eclipse thing that's going on a planet that consistently changes. And you know what it's going to be, right? It is going to be a lot of Returnal kind of gameplay, and I'm all for that. I'm actually excited to see it. Graphics, there wasn't enough there to say what the graphics will look like, but let's look at Returnal and say if it even looks like Returnal, it'll be good enough. And if it looks better than Returnal, it's going to be better than better. Like, that's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Colton says Tides or Shinobi. Dude, Shinobi was shown? Oh, yeah, Shinobi 2 was shown. Yeah, I'm a big Shinobi fan. That'll be fun. Even though that one probably doesn't, achieve Return Anal 2 to me, I'm still excited.
Yeah, I think there's something about Returnal that's so sleek and stylish and fast and smooth.
Sexy as hell, man. It's got
sexy as hell.
Yeah, it's got a thing to it that, and yes, I'm not talking about, and I'm not using sexy in that term. I'm using sexy in like a car term. There's something about it that's aesthetically, to me, Returnal was aesthetically pleasing despite it looking Elder God Cthulhu Event Horizon horror. It still had that, and the crunch, the sound, so well done. Cannot wait for that.
Yeah. It was a hard game too, by the way. It didn't have any modes or anything, and that kicked my ass. Really had to learn a bunch of stuff.
One of my favorite parts for Returnal, though, was listening to reviewers. Man, they were so mad. I've beat Dark Souls on a no-hit run.
Stating their credentials, I beat this game.
Yeah, I personally, PR'd Returnal. I've beat everybody. I'm the best player ever, and I can't get past the first level of Returnal. It's like, dude, sometimes those experiences aren't directly transferable. You'll get better. It's okay to get your butt kicked a little bit, and that's what that game did. And then after a while, you picked up on it. There were some tricks to that game. There's always a trick. There were some tricks to that game I didn't even know when I reviewed it. And then after I reviewed it 3 months later, I saw some guides and I saw somebody mentioning something about Returnal. I had never thought about the steps to take that this person took and would have made it easier for me. I was like, noted.
Yeah.
I mean, I did. I noted it. I'm like, next game that comes up like this, I'm going to see if if this kind of situation pops up in some usable way. So, yeah, that was great. Anything else at the state of play? People are saying Shinobi, Metal Eden, Tides of an... Okay, Creative just said every game that was at the Sony event. He said Shinobi, what a cheater. Shinobi, Metal Eden, Tides of Annihilation, Mind's Eye, Directive 8020. All looked good to me.
Yeah, Directive 8020 is the Man of Medan in space.
Man of Medan. I can't wait.
I
like their games.
Dude, the horror angle looks great.
Yep.
with all like the body horror stuff going on. Awesome.
Yeah,
I'm
I
down.
mean, sometimes they don't hit. I don't give a shit. Like, if Man of Medan only had one of the three I liked. I think I liked a lot one of the three. I somewhat liked one of them,
So
and I really didn't like one of them, if I remember.
so Men of Medan was the first in the Dark Anthology.
Well, yeah, it was the
trilogy.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, it was the Dark Anthologies trilogy.
Yeah,
I shouldn't call it Man of Medan. Yeah. Mohammed, thank you very much for becoming a member. You can also join anybody who becomes a member now. If you do, you can jump into our private Discord, and if you think for just a second that there isn't some cool shit in there, not only we had some behind the scenes on what's coming up, we also do some rumor drops that we don't do here as much, especially if there's not 100% on the rumor. Do some streaming of games. I streamed Avowed, hardcore mode last night with 0 HUD, and that was rough. That was hard. That is hard with no HUD on hard mode. Let me tell you, that was almost Dark Souls hard. That was crazy. So thank you very much for joining. I appreciate it. Anybody who does so, like I said, you'll get access to the Discord. You'll be able to jump in. We give away some games sometimes. We all hang out. It's been fucking a crazy time. SBZ says, FYI, Lost Souls Aside has been developed by one guy, Yang Bin, for 10 years. The game was heavily inspired by Final Fantasy World, which is why the MC is like Noctis. Damn. Okay. Awesome. Wasn't aware of that. That was also what we talked about. Remember yesterday's conversation in the Discord? Somebody was making a game or wants to make a game. And we were talking about how the creatives have changed, how things have changed, man, for creatives. Like how stuff works out, and his idea versus what you can put down versus, if you come from a technical background or a creative background, what your game might look like. But damn,
10 years ago, the guy was like developing an Unreal 3. Yeah.
Yeah, in BASIC, in DOS. He had a Sega Saturn there, talking directly to the RISC processor. I'm just joking. Let's see, what else? What else do we have? I love them all, says Creative. No, I get it. Biggest rumor, Carrot's beard is AI. That's true.
Oh, shit.
That's true. My beard, I created it when I was 13. What'd you say?
That would take a lot of resources.
There's so many, dude. People think that the NVIDIA GeForce Now servers are cracking, upscaling. It's the beard. What were you saying?
The beard. So this game called Warriors Abyss. Mm-hmm. It's a Warriors game, but it's isometric and it's kind of like Hades style.
Okay. What do you think?
Called they got my attention a little bit. It looked pretty good. If people are into that type of game, and it's out. So it's one of those where like, bam, it's out today.
Today is the day, or it was out on the event stream?
Like on the day of the event.
Man.
PS5 and PS4.
PS5, PS4, so exclusive at this point to those? Is that right?
Exclusive? What the page says. I'll have to.
I should point out that that's the other thing we should all be aware of, that these companies, when they show it at their event, they're purposely not going to talk about it being on somebody else's. So that popped up.
It is on PC too. I just confirmed it. But it's on Steam.
Okay. But it's on Steam. All right. Yeah, it's one of those things where, you usually have to sign in a week later and go, all right, what exactly am I at this particular point? What exactly am I seeing? Who's it exclusive to? Robert just said it's on Xbox too. So there you go. It's on Xbox as well. What else at the Sony event? The Sony event recorded like that, I don't mind them. I think they're good for those developers to be able to sort of take place of E3, get out of the E3 thing. I think that's the best part, especially when you look at E3 and the cost of. So you're talking anywhere from 400,000 to 600,000, upwards of $1 million I've heard of, for developers to set aside time to create a vertical slice for an E3. So the idea that these guys are, not going to E3s and doing these events and doing their own events weekly, I'm fine with it. It's just you have to parse your expectations down to what's happening, which is a monthly event. So you'll get some repeats sometimes. Liza P, as somebody said, Liza P DLC was announced there. DLC is another thing. If you went to an E3, there would almost never be DLC on the show floor, ever. No. Go to a PAX West, PAX Prime, PAX East. If you go to those, the chance of a DLC being there is DLC is the redheaded stepchild of gaming when it comes to coverage. whether it be YouTubers or whether it be an E3. They're just not done. So it's cool that we get these directs because they can show DLC for a game that is out on a competitor system first. Because wasn't that Xbox only? So, dude,
No, it is. Sorry, it is also PS5.
Was it PS5 day one?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So we haven't got there yet. But at some point in the future, not only will it be a DLC, but it'll probably be DLC for a game that was on Game Pass first or on PlayStation first.
Oh, I see what you mean.
I was saying. Yeah,
well,
which is
they
great.
Did talk about the Stellar Blade DLC, and that's coming out alongside the PC version.
So
they're kind of so they're kind of like timing those together.
Wait a minute, who's doing the port? Because Spider-Man was done by Nixies, and that didn't tune up.
I didn't check. I assumed it was the same team, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. What else do we have for the Sony event? That was about it, right? It was 40.
Yeah, that was about
minutes.
it. Lies of P. I'm very excited for. Absolutely love the game. The DLC looks great. And then, Tides of Annihilation looked interesting. They showed a bunch of different gameplay things. You had like some exploration and platforming and stuff, and then more combat too.
Yeah.
And the combat looked pretty weird in a way because you were like summoning these bigger dudes to hit enemies. So instead of the main character having attacks directly, a lot of them were, you would like call in like a big summon and they attack. So that looked interesting. I don't know how much of that is going to be controllable or just like, hey, summon it and it does the job for you. There was a lot of just floating around and then having just projectiles go onto enemies too. So it kind of looked like not direct combat in the usual way, a bit more like ranged or like less.
Well, here's the thing, man. Those kind of games, whenever you see them, I don't get too excited until I see much more gameplay and until I hear about the systems. Because the gameplay is one thing, systems, interviews are the other. I just need to see it all, sort of come together. But I will say that, what I was talking about earlier when it comes to Sony is I think people get under the impression it's like, oh, this port will work perfect because it's Nixies. And it's like, no, it won't. You don't, each port is different. Every title is different. You just get those kind of things happening. So you have to be prepared that just because it's a company, I saw this happening recently where people are like, oh, it's Nixies. Every game will be good because the first game's port was good. And you're like, dude, I don't know why we're thinking that. That's not how it works, especially when Spider-Man 2 does some pretty insane things that the original didn't even come close to doing. And we get that. They had a massive patch. So did Stalker 2. I don't know if you saw that shit. Stalker 2 was like 1,000 some fixes or whatever, or like balancing and stuff like that. So that was great. I thought that was cool. I enjoyed the hell out of Stalker 2 day one. So, like any fixes, any patches be good. And then Days Gone remastered.
Yeah.
It's a thing, but boy, did it not look good. It like that was, as a remaster, that was not what I was expecting graphically. I was like, oh, damn, it looked identical with some modes. That was not what I was expecting on a remaster. I wasn't expecting that remaster. We knew it was coming, but I wasn't expecting them to show it this week. It just wasn't on my list. But I think Days Gone originally looked pretty good on PC and certainly looked good from, the PS4 version. But I wasn't too impressed with that remaster. It looked sort of muddy. We'll just have to see. Could have just been cranked up footage. What did they say for the date on remastered? Do you know? Did they give a date for Days Gone remastered?
Let me see.
Because maybe if they didn't give a date, that would make even more sense, right?
They did. It's on the 25th of April.
March, April. Okay, they have some time. Dionysus. There we go. Do you guys think that a possible Days Gone sequel hinges on how well the remaster performs? Nah, man. That kind of stuff. I mean, we're talking about a time where every industry is being hit hugely. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that you cannot look at a remaster and say, "Oh, the remaster did well." Especially because you'll never do amazing on the remaster compared to the original. If the game's good enough to get a remaster, people love it. I don't think so. I think maybe in the past that would maybe bear out, but even the developers I've talked to, I've asked them, you know, does the remaster selling well or not really mean much? And they're like, it helps if you want to sell that you want to do a sequel. But the idea is that if you're trying to sell a sequel by the remaster, that means you have to create the remaster, you have to sell the remaster, you have to get the numbers for the remaster sales, you have to put together your PowerPoint, basically. Then you have to go and you have to tell them, and in 5 years, people are going to want this exact game again. In 5 years. That is a hard sell on just remasters numbers. Do you see what I'm saying? That's just one thing, and it's usually maybe rolling it out to another platform, which we've seen as well, not in this case, but yeah.
And also, to be honest, if you wait until you have all that feedback from the remaster coming out, at that point you're starting the next project.
That's what I mean. 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. I added a year. I was thinking 4 for the development for a sequel, and then a year for the time to get your data and really be like, because you have to put the team together too. Unless you put the team together and then say, hey, do you guys want to do the remaster?
Everybody's just absolutely ready to just...
Dude, I love this. The envision big office. It's just like, it's like, ooh, I disappeared. It's like Severance.
They're waiting for a big gun to go off or something and start coding.
There's a guy there with his little flare gun. And he's just waiting for the call where they're like, it's go. Right in the ceiling, lights the place on fire. Bad planning. No, I mean, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of different stuff that happens when it comes to making that game. I would play the hell out of a Days Gone sequel. I didn't love it when it was first announced, and then it got patched up, and it was fun to play. What's up, Asa? He says, let's see. People are talking about something being a hinge. I missed it, but he's his door is locked from the other side hinge. I didn't see anything that screamed $10 upgrade. I just want to see Days Gone. PK says, such a shame. In the era of live-action video game adaptions, a Days Gone sequel would probably lead to an adaptation with Sam Witwer being Deacon in the show. Could. Sam Witwer now looks the age of how Days Gone character played. He sounded like an old gruff dude whose nuts weren't working as well as they used to, you know, so he uses anger instead of true testosterone to, like, get him through the action sequences. He was a lot like Joel in a way. He was an older main character, so I liked that. I thought he was enjoyable, and I loved that he was insane. At least in the version I played, he'd just see enemies where there were no enemies, and I still to this day don't know if that was on purpose. But you'd be walking down the center of something, no enemies around. He was like, "Watch out! Oh my God, there's guys over there!" And you'd be like, "There's fucking guys nowhere. What are you talking about?" And I liked it because I still to this day have no clue if that dude's was just slowly had Alzheimer's
in your head. That's part of the fiction
boxes he found. Yeah, dude, oh, it absolutely was. It absolutely was a part of the fiction. He was just a cranky old man who probably had brainworms from the ancient spam cans that he had been finding and the dinky do fucking dog food like Mad Max. Who knows? I like Days Gone, but my save got glitched into a loop. I don't know what that means, but that sucks balls. Let's see. You have to you don't have to remaster much and just add SSR or DLSS. God, I hope not. That's not what we want, man. You don't want just that. You don't want just a remaster that's that. But so that's it for the Sony event. Let's talk about Avowed. So my time with Avowed was I did a preview event. I'll say it this way. I played enough of the preview that I was getting ready to do a video, and there were all these people. I played. The current YouTube zeitgeist is either we have a problem, I played this much and here are my thoughts, or what have you. You know, the typical YouTube sort of titling. And I looked at all those titles and I looked at what they were sort of covering, and I played a bunch of the preview, and I decided, you know what? I'm not going to do the preview. I'm not going to do a video on the preview. What we're going to do is cover it. We covered it a little bit in the podcast here and in the Patreon. I was going to wait for the review to see if some of the things that I wanted to see fixed were fixed, and if the gameplay was as enjoyable as I thought it was. Because a preview is a hard sell. Previews can be overly negative, overly positive, and then you have to also understand one of the things a lot of previewers don't seem to be getting lately is that that's a game in flux and a game that is being created. So you have somebody be like, I didn't like this, blah, 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 because this and this wasn't done. And you'll be like, dude, yeah, right. The game's not done. You know, you have to sort of be judicious in how you cover it.
Yeah.
The gameplay was way better than I thought it was going to be. That's just the solid end of it. That is not what I expected. It was way smoother than I expected, and a much more enjoyable combat than those shit previews, those potato-ass, nasty previews displayed. And that, to me, was quite surprising, because I was like, this is not, it doesn't look good. And then I got hands on the preview, and I was like, wait, I think I know what they're doing. And then in the review, I could say I solidified that thought. When I started playing the review, I was like, I do now know exactly what they're doing. And I will say this, whether you like Avowed or not, and they have some choices in other places that seem cut in some places and too deep in others, the one thing I can say is they understood their gameplay. It has Dying Light style movement and parkour at times. It's got a combat that is much closer to, as somebody said, Oblivion, much closer to not Kingdoms of Amalur. It's not that stiff. But it's got the free-flowing arcade RPG combat. Almost, as somebody said last night when I was doing the hardcore mode, they were like, it almost feels like Call of Duty at times. Like there's something about the combat that feels that fast, and with the dashing, the dodging, and the switching out of weapons. And I don't know if I'd go that far, but I would say that the combat was much more enjoyable than I thought. But here's the problem. That story, not for me.
No.
Dude. I don't know if it's impenetrable. I don't know, but you were having dreams, and it was like listening to Joe Rogan talk about DMT, but only seeing a fucking small cut of it. And you were having dreams, and then people were saying stuff, and I said it in the review. I'm like, if you get lost, or you just it doesn't grab you, because it's very spiritually based on the gods, which is directly connected to Pillars. So Pillars fans will like that part for sure. And I admit I wasn't the biggest when it comes to Pillars story originally. But here's the thing. Ignoring all that, you're an envoy that is there as a diplomat to fix some shit. If you solidify that and you just go, I got to fix some shit, which means killing a bunch of people, figuring out some clues, and taking some guys down and furthering the story, you'll be fine. If you try to dive into the story, when it comes to the headier, bigger plot point, you really have to pay attention. And even then, there's some iffiness there. I don't think the writing is up to, I didn't personally think the writing was up to Pillars 1, Pillars 1's level. Pillar 2, I didn't like as much as 1 either. And then you have Tyranny, which I think is probably their top tier writing, because of the dichotomy of you being a bad good guy, or good bad guy. Bad good guy on Tyranny, I would say.
Yeah.
So I got to play that. I think I have, I don't remember, probably 100, I'm sure 100 plus hours in it. And at least 1,000 bear kills.
Did you do like multiple playthroughs?
Yeah.
Or
well, you don't have to do multiple playthroughs. That's what's awesome here. There's a lodging that basically says, hey, watch out. At this point on, story past stuff closes off. But you can respec at any time. Anytime.
Oh, cool.
Pretty sure you can respec during combat. I haven't tried it, but it's like you just respec when you want to respec. So respecing is like boom. Is the story cheeks? No, the story is just very eclectic and very airy and spiritual, and that kind of stuff to me needs to really be locked down. And it is very tangential in some of its descriptions, meaning if you say, what type of cheese is that? It'll tell you how long it took to age, and you have to figure out which cheese it might be. It's very disconnected, because some of the things you're talking to aren't us, and they have a different thought process. And, you know, it's like sort of like trying to translate a dolphin, and you try to ask it about the stars, and the dolphin's like, I don't know what stars are, you know, but I can tell you what the surface of the ocean is. So
yeah, a little bit like talking to Mufasa in The Lion King, where he's like talking in riddles or something.
I wonder if every time a dolphin leaps out of the water, it thinks it's going to space. Sorry. Anyway, I'm just heady questions, but so that's sort of what this game made me feel, though. But the thing is the combat, the respecking, all that stuff works great. Some fun skills. some really good combat when it comes to the parrying, when it comes to the blocking the different weapons. But here's the thing. It's got another thing I feel is too detailed for this game. Doesn't need to be there. There is a equipment level system that is by word: common, fine, exceptional, phenomenal. I don't know if it's phenomenal. I can't remember. But
I'm gonna open the door.
Go for it.
Sorry, continue. I'll keep hearing.
Yeah, no worries. And then legendary. The problem with this game is not only is the equipment that way, but then when you also look at the weapons are that way. And the problem with the game is that not only are you doing damage, but there's a percentage damage and then there's a raw number reduction. And when you get hit by a weapon that's above your level, it does more damage. And it can be difficult to understand if the raw number is also subtracted from a percentage that the weapon has, or if the raw number is always a raw number that stays. There's 2 damage reductions, which I found quite weird. I didn't mind it when it said it was stun, but there's like a stun, it does more stun defense. There were armors that said just randomly damage reduction. And when you start realizing that a monster you're fighting has fine weapons and you have common armor, and then you look at your damage reduction and you're like, okay, so everything's on a percentage other than this raw number. Do I have to do the math for the raw number percentage as well? And when you go into the tutorials, it doesn't explain that quite well. And this happens with you as well. When you have a weapon and you're attacking somebody below you, you can't see their equipment. You just, you've got exquisite or whatever legendary items. And there's this explanation point that doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't really need to be done, when in all honesty, they could have just upped the damage and really had that not matter. Because additionally, completely separate from this, you have armor types that reduce stagger. So if you have light armor, medium, or heavy, light armor doesn't reduce stagger as much as medium, doesn't reduce it as much as heavy. And then you can get skills that allow you to use the heavier armor without a damage or without more stamina being reduced. So you have a lot of systems playing out in a game that plays more arcadey than those systems represent. And it becomes even more present when you leap into a battle and you're fighting normal guys, and somehow you kite a guy that's got a skeleton on his life bar, which, by the way, the skeletons are like that fucking big. Especially if you're playing on anything that isn't a big device, the skeletons are next to the meters, or if you turn all of the HUD off, you can't tell that. So there is this odd dichotomy of the gameplay itself presenting as this fast, somewhat skill-based, enjoyable, really, really actually quite enjoyable combat that then is held down by these modifiers that you can't see in a lot of characters exactly what you're going to be doing. You hit a guy, and then here's the other problem. The companions like to tell you that you don't have the right stuff. Battles can last longer depending on your difficulty, and they're obviously going on a timer. So what happens is, the higher you set the difficulty, the more those companions tell you you suck. And it can get quite annoying to be playing that game and have your companion be like, we don't have the right weapon. Then you get hit. We don't have the right armor. You're still fighting. You get hit with a weapon. We don't have the right weapon. Then they say, this guy's got better stuff than us. Then you attack him. Don't have the right weapon. On and on. Then I think the counters reset when they die. And they die a lot. They're made of paper mache and hope. I'm not lying. These guys are... It didn't matter how updated I was. It didn't matter if I was fighting guys my level or below. Those guys still died a lot. And trying to heal them in third person was rough because if you get too close to them, you can't heal them. You know, typical sort of game where you have to be in a zone to heal them, look down, resurrect them. So when you're in third person, with or without a HUD, you have to sort of look at the body center, I guess. Well, the body center, of course, is kneeled down. Or looking down. So you can't be looking at everybody. You're trying to heal the guy. And in third person, you do a lot of this, trying to get close to heal him. And the space is this big.
Aim for the crotch.
But it's this big. So when you pass through it, it goes away. And then you back up and it goes away. Then guess what happens? You get stunned or staggered. You're pushed out of it. All that kind of stuff works normally. It's just that because of these other levels and these other enemies and the stagger, which I like all of that stuff, it just becomes a little ungainly. That's just the way it feels.
So between those things and like any bugs you might have run into,
no, so
or
bugs were weird.
annoyances,
I had
how
one.
much friction overall? Like,
I had one bug in the entire game. There's a quest bug you can hit. We know of. They patched They gave us a list. There was like, you always get lists, or you get an alert, is what I got, was that there's a day one. And we got that patch. It fixed a lot of the bugs for people. I was quite impressed, or at least lucky, that I didn't get any. Here's my biggest bug I did get. DLSS and FSR at that point were not working well on the Game Pass version. You'd turn them on, they'd sometimes work. You'd turn them off, turn them on, they wouldn't work. That was very difficult for testing. Luckily, my original Steam preview was on Steam, and that version was working. Now it's working across the board. Checked it day one, moment, right when it downloaded, tried it out, DLSS, FSR are working. So you're good to go. But at that time, it was quite difficult. I had a guy stuck in the ground, and I killed him. Had one or two quests where either they reset or I didn't know what I was doing, so I lost about 2 minutes. As I went into a place and I was like, I think I need to switch this. There was a couple pathing issues with NPCs, but for a game with enemies that have their own special moves, see, that's the other thing about combat. They have their own special moves, which I thought was awesome. And there's a lot of bears. The game is just all fucking bears, all the way down. Like, it is ridiculous. And 6 bears in a fight, not uncommon. And the bears don't just attack normally. They have their own specials. So one of their normal attacks, we would say, is to leap forward a great deal. In fact, the greatest part about this game that every game needs to do is the enemy's ability to get to you if you turtle. If you put your shield up and you think you're far enough away from the enemy, you ain't fucking far enough away. Because that enemy will leap forward. Lizard men will throw stuff. They'll leap forward. They'll leap back. They'll do backflips. That kind of in and out is awesome. Every fantasy game needs that. It felt good. That was great. But the bears fucking, like, sure you can. They're they're getting up on their hind legs and they're fucking left, right, left in you like you're in a fight with Pacquiao. And you've got your shield up, and then a guy from the right comes and you defend him, and you look to your left and there's 2 more bears. And the game has no issue throwing every bear at you, throwing a special. So I have a video of all 3 bears doing specials at my face, and I'm just sitting there going like, what the
dude?
So I liked it. I like what the fuck moments. I like that kind of stuff. I thought it was fine. I tease the bears because there's a lot. I tease them more because they're hard. They're pretty tanky. And they clog up areas because you can't get by them. So when a bear comes down, like, let's say you go into a cave and the bear's coming from outside in, you're screwed. You're not getting past that bear unless you stun it and leap over it, because he's just like fucking, he's like a bouncer.
Block the way.
Yeah,
literally.
And so that was awesome, man. I had a really good time. With that combat. There was a lot of stuff there that I really enjoyed. Upgrading. Great thing about the game is every game needs to do this. Every item you pick up, you go to your inventory, and instead of going somewhere else, it tells you in your inventory in the first screen exactly what items you need to upgrade it and what you get for breaking it down. So what would happen was, where these games are pause simulators all the fucking time. Pause, go in, check crafting, pause, go back, look at the upgrade. This had none of that. You go in, you pick up an item, you open up your inventory, and it states right there what you need to look at. You close it instantly, and you start looking in the world for that item. It's fucking instant. It was great.
That's good.
It was awesome. Like, that kind of stuff. I know sometimes it's there in some games, but most games have a scroll where you have to scroll down to it because they find that to not be useful data. So they put it at the bottom. This one, pop in, look, pop out. Okay, I need to find this particular fern. I just need to keep an eye out. Or, even better, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about, which is good too. You'll look at the item and go, okay, I've never seen this upgrade item. So that informs you right away that what you do have in your inventory has not used that item. And so now this is de facto most likely a better item than what you have currently. It's onomatopoeia. It's very nice in those ways. That's the thing that goes on with Avowed, is this up and down. People are asking about the third person. Way better than I thought it was going to be. Third person is super useful in this game because there's a lot of verticality. This is something that Colt talked about. It's something that Fighting Cowboy talked about. Fighting Cowboy covered it a bunch in his review, especially when it comes to just the different modes, what he likes, what he doesn't like. As a Dark Souls fan, I didn't know where he was going to be in the like or dislike of the combat, but also the camera. The camera was not switchable in my preview. It is now switchable. So you can switch into third person in the middle of combat. Huge bonus when the game is very vertical. Guys will leap up onto a ledge above you with not a care in the world. And it's great. I like highly mobile enemies. They're all on fucking Segway scooters. Like, that's the best part. Is you'll be fighting a guy and he'll just leap up onto a cliff and you're like, oh shit. Now I got to watch out for this guy. So sometimes pop into third person lets you see right and left. And remember, gameplay changes in third person. One of the reasons why, when you saddle right and left, or you strafe right and left in a first-person game, you can't see your shoulder. So you always have to be worried that you might bump into something. When you go to third-person view, now you can see 5-10 feet on both sides. So your gameplay style changes. And that, I noticed, if you even watch my footage, I do a lot more not circle strafing, but a lot more like sort of investigative gameplay when I'm in third person versus first, because there is a wider viewpoint that doesn't exist in first. So yeah, a lot of enjoyable stuff, but the story, the lack of DLSS really hurt it in FSR. I find that those aren't required, but they should be in every game because they are now a de facto thing you can use. You want the game to be optimized, but those are features now, the same as anti-aliasing. They need to be in your goddamn game. Day one, they need to work. And that was very troublesome. And then I would say the lack of stealing. So that's the one thing that came up. This isn't Kingdom Come Deliverance. It's not supposed to be like that. So you can steal because you're the Avowed, right? You're the Envoy, sorry. And you're the law of the land. Two issues with that. You are the law of the land, and I'm okay with that because there's not a lot to steal. There's stuff, but not a lot. And I've always been bothered by one thing too, Johnny. In most games, and people won't want to admit this because it will be saying something positive about this game, even though I didn't love the game. And I said, it's definitely not worth getting at the premium price at all. But in most games, a guy can be standing next to 3 fucking boxes. You smash those boxes, you can steal that shit 9 times out of 10. But if they have shit laying on a thing next to them, you can't. So there's a dichotomy even in the best of games. In this game, they just said, screw it. You can take whatever isn't nailed down because you are the law of the land. That could bother people. Additionally, when you go into the wildlands, those guys don't care about who you are. So the idea that you can still steal from them is a little odd. However, I don't know how they would fucking... I normally, what do? You allow me to kill the NPCs? Or you have a guard system and a penalty system? How do you handle that? And I think the game's the problem with the game that came up for me was the systems that didn't match up. And it was very difficult to figure out why this system, like armor, was so complex. Why stealing was so minimalized without more reminders of why. Like, if you want to sell it to me, give it me in the fiction consistently. Let people say, what are you doing? Oh, you're the envoy. I would have been fine with that. Lie to me. It's fine. But they didn't do that. They tell you at the starting, there's some hints, and then from that point on, you go on. But
yeah,
other than that, from what I see, it's doing well. It's #1 on Steam for sales. That's with Game Pass and Blizzard both taking numbers away from Steam, and it's still like at 82% or 81%. So like for them, it's a success. I'm gonna keep playing it. I'll say if my review has changed, in the next week or so. But I'm doing other games right now. I do want to return to it. That's cool. That's my Avowed
I
data.
was really happy to hear that the combat was much more fun than what it looked like. It's maybe a bit hard to show to that type of combat because it might look a bit generic, a bit like Skyrim, basically. But it's got a lot of its own stuff into it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, hell, you could have like one pistol and a book, right? I think you could.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Mix and match.
Yeah, it's awesome. And one of the cool things too is like if you're in third, you see different, and also just depending on the weapon, you see different animations for different things. So you can sort of decide what you want to play. Also was pretty impressed by the hair. It wasn't the best, but like when you run sideways and you're in third person, I was like, oh, okay.
Did it move and stuff?
Yeah, it did. It did with some weight.
Good.
I was like, oh, it's better than nothing. One thing I loved about the spell casting in this game that I wish other games would do is you have grimoires and you have spells in them, but you can also buy those spells to be able to cast as an ability. But if you hold the spell in your hand, you double the power of the spell. So even though you can cast it naturally and you can throw the book away, if you don't throw the book away and use up an inventory space by holding it, you double up the spell. That is awesome because that changed my opinion of like what I was going to do. I started looking at the items going, okay, well, I do have a lower level grimoire, but if I keep a hold of it, it'll be a more powerful spell for right now till I get a better one. So I'm just going to keep a hold of this instead of breaking them down or selling them. So there's some very cool systems in it. But if you expect Obsidian level writing, I just didn't feel it was there. I also wasn't a big fan of the music as much as I thought I was going to be. This is not comparing composers. I just want to say that Justin Bell had done a lot of the composing, and I think for, his particular style suited me more than what's in this. It's not bad. It's just it didn't do whatever Outer Worlds main menu did. Outer Worlds main menu made me go, holy shit.
Yeah.
Pillars.
Memorable.
And this was just a thing. Like I don't know, very hard to describe on that level, but wasn't bad.
Is Outer Worlds a good comparison as a game? If you were gonna say like Avowed is like Outer Worlds,
yeah, there's Outer Worlds DNA in it. Definitely the DNA of Outer Worlds is pretty much through it all, even if it's to prove that they can make better combat than Outer Worlds. There is almost a flex going on. Like, we were talking about that last night in the podcast because somebody was asking the same thing. They were like, is the comparison just an easy comparison? I was like, actually, if you asked me, there's a whiteboard somewhere in Obsidian's offices that states, no matter what, we got to make this better than Outer Worlds combat. Like, that's what it feels like. It feels like a bit of a flex. Because even the guns feel better in this than Outer Worlds, which I found really weird because it is a fantasy game. The wands feel awesome too. Double fisting Harry Pogwarts wand or Harry Pogwarts, Harry Potter's wands. Pogwarts.
Yeah.
Pogwarts. Yeah. That's a Pornhub tab for sure. But you can double fist, you can hold them down for power attacks. All works really well. Yeah. So I hope some of the issues I have that I had at the time are fixed. I know most of them are. But you don't know until you get that patch. So I gave it the review I gave it. Characterization was okay too. Garrus, best friend blue dude, wasn't really for me.
Fish guy.
Yeah, there was one or two. There's an NPC later that I thought was pretty cool, and there's some other stuff that they didn't say we're not supposed to talk about it, but it's like I think it'd be spoilers or whatever that I thought were pretty cool. Some cool character, some great quests, some bad ones too, though. Just sort of wishy-washy on that. Maybe that means Outer World 2 combat will be upgraded. Yeah, I don't see them going back. That would be weird because I feel like they can look at this and say, now let's beat this combat in their next game. That's what they should. I don't want to say they should be doing, but that's what you would assume that they would.
Yeah.
So anybody have any questions about Avowed before we move on? What about you, Johnny? Any other questions about it?
Man, no, I'm really positively surprised to hear that it's the gameplay that actually seems to carry most of the game as opposed to the story necessarily. So that's cool. And it looks amazing. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about like presentation, how they've done environments or like open areas and stuff? Anything speak to you?
The neon look is people who don't like Outer Worlds probably won't like this. Because it's got that neon look, the weird graphics. It's
colorful?
Colorful, yeah. JR says, can I go down on a Kraken? No, but you're going to look like it. Like I said in the review, if you turn on the God Touch stuff, you're going to look like you went down on a sea creature. It is a creepy-ass situation. I don't mind it. The draw distance might be the best I've ever seen in a game, bar none. I was showing some video last night in some areas where I was letting people watch me play it, and it's crazy complex. Like, you can see stuff that exists well beyond what it does in most other games. And it has very little in the it's got a couple Unreal issues, but nowhere near what I was expecting. The draw distance is sort of beyond belief, actually. There were a couple times where I was like, are they trading? How are they doing such a complex, far-off scene when most games will cut that down to a very basic? And I'm sure they're using Unreal in the way that they should be with all of the systems in that way. But graphically, I'm not a big fan of the coral look, to be honest. I like that it's different.
Sorry.
Yeah, I like that it's different. It's the living world. It's mutation. But what it looks like to me is maybe an ocean had dried up, because a lot of the places have what looks to be underwater coral, underwater vegetation with that very high color fluorescent look, which is great. It's magical looking, truly magical looking. But I do have a tendency to like a little bit more realistic stuff. And the NPCs, give and take. I saw some NPCs that looked great, and then I saw a lot that I was like, damn. But that's lighting was one thing, design, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
I watched a bit of Digital Foundry's video on it, and they showed this, what you were describing with the depth of field really well. Like, you could walk up to a scene. They showed a tree, for example, that, you would walk up closer to it, and it's still
solid
rendered.
Image. Yeah,
it's solid.
Image quality is crazy.
Because there's so many games, right? As you walk closer to something, like, it's shifting. You can see it's like re-rendering. It's maybe changing the resolution, or it's kind of jittering a bit.
Yeah,
that's really cool to see, man.
Yeah, dude, it was just it was crazy. And that's the thing I think I've seen with every review is the exploration and the combat are hands down like
awesome,
crazy. Yeah, and you just sort of, it's weird because you wouldn't consider Obsidian being that. We saw it with Outer Worlds. Okay, exploration, but the hub worlds weren't that big. And they sort of, I'm not saying they lied, but I like how they downplayed the size of this game. Because you go into one place and you're like, damn, that's pretty big. You go into another place and you're like, wait a minute, it can't be that big, right? Like, that's huge. And you look at the map and you're all, obviously there's got to be some cutoffs, some places you can't go. But there's very few of the, if you play Outer Worlds, I've played it through 3 times for review and a 4th time just for the hell of it on the Legion. There's some tight areas where you realize there's a lot of shit on the side you can't get through. And that's how they get away with the performance. In this one, it ain't like that. And then there's another area where you go into and you're like, nope, flatly can't be that big. And it's not that I'm saying it's so big other games haven't done it. I'm saying in what they stated and how the game works, I was not expecting them to be that large. The other negative people have that I don't mind at all, but I understand, and I want to point it out that I truly understand it, is the enemies are hand-placed. There's not a randomization going on. They're hand-placed. So when the enemy dies, they're dead. That area is free for you to go through. But there's fast travel as well. So what I did was I would kill the guys on the way somewhere, and then I would fast travel back because I knew that area was empty. And then I would sort of explore and minefield the rest to see if there's anybody I missed. No issue with that. But I do understand a lot of people are accustomed to procedural generation kind of stuff, or an RNG, which is something more along the lines of traveling in Kingdom Come Deliverance. When you jump on the horse, you have an RNG for if things are in the local area. The other thing that I saw that didn't bother me so much, but bothered other people, was that the NPCs don't move. So they made that clear a long time ago. So I don't know if people were surprised by it, but that was known ages ago. I mean, and not only that, but you saw it in any previews that they showed NPC. There was not like, it was Outer Worlds, which Outer Worlds does the same thing. It is very Outer Worlds in that way, where the guy is there. It's very old school RPG. Many RPGs do it. I was not expecting them to be running around. The enemies are what's running around. The humans are not. They don't have a sim schedule. They made it pretty clear that they weren't going to do it, and that's performance sparing for sure. You get extra performance when you're not simulating all these guys walking around. No issues there, but I do understand why people are accustomed to that. But my review is to tell people what's in it and what's not, and that is not in it. Whether you like it or not, at least now you know. That is something that does. There isn't that sim element to the game. It is a older school RPG style.
So what would be an example? Maybe Assassin's Creed. They do the thing where they're simulating routines and stuff for
Assassin's
NPCs.
Creed, Kingdom Come Deliverance takes some shortcuts, but they do somewhat the same. But in all honesty, when you look at it and the way they explained it, I was just like, okay, I get where they're going.
Made sense.
I don't know if I would have liked the NPCs walking around if I couldn't do the quests either. I would have liked, I think, a quest giver in this game not being available right away would piss me off because there was no. So here, let me explain it this way. If there's an RNG in the way the people move around, then that means you're going to have to do something to pass through the night. And if you kill the enemies and they're not RNG, what are you going to pass the night? What are you going to do? You're going to be done. So then you have to go to camp, and you have to go to camp, fast teleport to camp, then fast teleport back to get the data reset. So again, on this, to be honest, I saw it as like, okay, I can see 7 steps ahead. If they had chosen to do this, they chose it to do this way, less travel, I'm fine with it. But I do get why people would want more. It's just not that kind of game. It is Outer Worlds in that way. This is identical to Outer Worlds. Stuff is just there. You have to sort of buy off on that. Reviewers that I usually follow seem to have enjoyed the game much more than the big media outlets, IGN. I was surprised when I saw mixed reviews. I wouldn't be surprised by any game getting mixed reviews because I don't think there's been a game in history that hasn't got mixed reviews. I don't think people didn't like Zelda. So I wouldn't be surprised at all. And some big companies did like it. I didn't see any bad ones, like even IGN, and I think that's Travis. And Travis is known, I think Travis's expectations he brings into the review versus even what he knows and what they've stated. It's sort of what he wants. If I remember, it was Travis, who we've had on the podcast. And I don't want to speak for him, but I'm pretty sure he gave it a 7, which, I mean, I don't know what that means anymore on IGN. But from Travis, personally, knowing the games that we've talked about and what he likes, I actually assume to him a 7 is a good game that maybe didn't, like, light his fire too much. So to me, that's, from him in particular, is probably better.
That makes sense.
I would have assumed.
Did you have any difficulty spikes? Was it hard, the game overall, or no?
No difficulty. I saw a lot of people playing it in coverage, playing it on easy, which I think would have been a terrible idea, or normal. I think hard feels good. Very hard is doable, but man, if you turn the HUD off and you can't see those symbols and you can't, that last night when I was playing, that really changed the feel of the game. I enjoyed it a lot with no HUD on the hardest difficulty. And I was able to beat guys. It's just a lot of thought, like a ton of understanding exactly when you need to cast a spell, running, retreating, using your characters instantly, not waiting around going, oh yeah, I need to use the NPC. Instead, you were like, I need to use the NPC right now, the moment she's ready to use, and I need to back away.
Cooldowns.
Yeah. I would say it dramatically changes the feel of that game if you go to the hardest mode, more so than a lot of other games I've ever played. Hard, normal, doable.
That sounds like a second playthrough, ideally, type thing where you already know maybe the enemies, or you already know how to address.
Since kiting is possible,
things.
You can have different situations depending on your kite, right? You could. There's a lot. So, and then if you kill the summoner before he can summon, then that could change it. I would say then you have the story. I would say, I don't know if it's fully there for a second playthrough. I would say no HUD and hardest would be. Hardest on its own, maybe not so much. But if you tried no HUD and hardest, depends on how much you like the game. Yeah, depends on how much you like the game. A lot of people liked it a lot better than me. I was more middling on it, but not in any way that was like it was bad. It was just probably higher than Travis, maybe, in some places, and then lower than him in others. But I'd be honest, I don't really watch. Once I do a game, the review's out. I can't change my thoughts on it. So, or like, I guess I wouldn't, but I can't. It really doesn't matter too much. So what I saw was like what I saw. I saw some scores. People sent me their stuff.
You don't get curious to see like what other people are saying, if they said the same thing as you or the opposite thing from you?
I don't really care, because if you and I are playing Dark Souls and we're playing at the same time, I care. But if you were to throw a review down and you've put your foot down and I put my foot down, I'm usually going to another game. to review. And prior to reviewing, I would have been going to another game to play. I don't care too much because I don't think I'm going to get much from it. I'll get more from you. I won't get as much from reviewers because I know that they were held to the same structure as I was. They were held to the prior day zero patch. They were held to any tech issues. They were held to what they could say in the review if there were spoiler stuff in the reviews, which there was. There was some story spoilers said, please don't, spoil this. So to me, I don't care because I talked to Fighting Cowboy afterwards a lot, but we talk more about the combat and stuff. We don't, and we have a tendency to almost always agree, or he gets me. So like if I disagree on something, he's like, I get it. And I can see where he's coming from when he does. But you would matter more to me than another reviewer because you experience it. And then I would want to hear if I failed you you were playing. If you came to me and said, like, there's a massive part of this game that you didn't explain, I would want to know so that even I could go into another review and go, I got a hint about this, if that was an anti-spoiler. So I care more about the players. I care more, and I'm not saying, oh, I'm good. I'm literally saying, as feedback, the only ones that are useful are you, because the other people, it's done. It's gone. So
if there was something big that maybe you didn't pick up on or you didn't,
I'll hear it from
mention.
players. I'll hear it from our Discord, and that's vital. I like to talk to like Travis or Fighting Cowboy or Colt, those guys, when we're talking about how we do it and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to the particular game, not so much. I mean, and like the same way would happen with you. Let me give you an example. If we're both reviewing a game and we both post our review, other than some curiosity, you've stated your point and you've posted your edited down to a very particular, it's out there. And so I can't change you. I can't revert back, The only thing I would probably ask you as a reviewer, because I know that, you're looking to review games in the future and stuff like that, would be stuff like, if you didn't like it as much, was it because of the same thing I didn't like, or was it that you didn't like it for something I loved? And once I find that out from certain people, I don't have a tendency to there's a big difference between what they like and what I like. And so therefore I already understand it. Like there's some people I know who review games where I'm like, they love something I hate. And I can tell after a couple reviews.
So it makes sense that there's a disconnect maybe in their review of what they're saying.
Yeah. Let's see. What else do we got? Hell is Us is September 4th, 2025 set date, they just said. What's Hell is Us? That's another one that was shown, right?
Yeah, that was shown as well. I have to remind myself.
While you're looking for that, PK says, honestly, I tend to only listen to reviewers I've followed for at least a decade because now there's no such thing as discourse, only extreme takes. I will explain one thing about my thumbnails and about my titles. I've been asked multiple times, why don't I, if I hate something or if I love something, why don't I put it in the title? And I will tell you, it's exactly that. It's called viewer whiplash. It's a very real thing. Viewer whiplash is when I say something is absolutely terrible, something is amazing. Something is absolutely terrible, something is amazing. And I slightly change the words. At some point, the viewer gets whiplash, and what happens is the middle ground can never be seen. And when it comes to the middle ground, that's, I think, more important that I explain the context, and then you come out of it with my score, but you go into the video not getting whiplash, because I could say, and here's another part of whiplash, I could say this is absolutely disappointing, I fucking hated everything, here's my title, and you jump in and what I describe comes across as a positive for you, then you may go, oh, well, if Carrick feels that way about this, he feels that way about every game, now we're gonna completely disagree from now on. And that's also bad.
Yeah. Or it might be like, I know you feel a certain way about a type of game, and therefore I'm already expecting that we might diverge.
I saw the title and thumbnail change for the Avowed review in real time and died. Yeah, I had to change it 3 times. I put Living Lands or Dead on Arrival because I thought that would be cool. And Dead on Arrival got flagged by YouTube. It wasn't getting sent to people, and I could tell because you can look and go, something's up there, and it just gets caught in a review schedule, and it would have been fine. But because it was a big review, I was like, okay, I got to change that. So I changed it 2 or 3 times. And then when we started talking about the bears, I was like, oh, you know what would be fun is to do a bear, like something in the game as the title versus, oh, you know, this is an absolute terrible thing, or oh, I did 2,000% of this game. Oh, I played 2,000 hours. It's like, it's the same way when we talk about achievements or whatever. It's like, oh, I got the achievement in this game. Great. So you hit an elf 1,000 times with a hammer. That does not in any way, shape, or form explain the game to anybody. It means nothing. It means nothing. You need to explain context versus any kind of these checkpoint things, because otherwise, I don't think you're I don't think you're covering it very well for the people who are trying to listen. Because it's like, oh, yeah. So for example, I saw an achievement that was summon a bear to kill another bear. There was an achievement that said respec, totally respec, or respec everybody. But the game lets you pay $100 in game to do that. So getting that achievement is quite literally hitting a button and filling the numbers out again, hitting A.
Yeah.
You'll get the achievement and then switch back. It means nothing. It's completely useless. As it's the same way why I don't say I said 100 hours and 1,000 bears, because I wanted to indicate the 1,000 bears. Why you won't hear me very often say I've spent 100 hours in it is because that means nothing. I've spent 100 hours in a game. So yeah. What is that? Were you farming for 99 of them? If it's a fighting game,
did you listen to dialogue? Like, were you engaged, or were you checked out?
It's a completely useless, like, it doesn't make any sense as a describer. So that's why I just say, here's the review, and you guys deal with it. And if you hate me, it's fine.
Well, you have the standard of finishing the game, right? I think you pretty much always
finish the game. Well, there's been a couple where I haven't, or you can't. But I just say it, either call it first impressions or state it right there that, hey, you know, for a bug I couldn't. That game will usually get a don't buy or never touch.
Yeah. I will say it's pretty rare. I don't know if I remember one where you said
it's very rare. It's very easy to beat the games in the times that most developers give you. And some developers, if you ask them, I'm sure would help you through it. If you, Bardsdale, do you remember Bardsdale? Bardsdale was the one where I got stuck on the puzzle. And
that puzzle.
I was DMing the developers going, listen, is this game broken? Because I don't understand what's going on. And
did they give you like a guide or something? Like if you're playing...
No, so here's what
maybe a Souls game or, something complicated.
That's a good question. I think some devs will give you some devs have given walkthroughs or hints, but a lot of times it's just like, hey, if you're having a problem, dodge more. Sort of like Gennaro.
Okay. Okay.
By
the way, Hell Is Us got mentioned before. This, the reason I didn't remember, it's a purely like cinematic teaser they showed, a trailer. And it's a kind of dystopian, post-apocalyptic, sci-fi-ish action-adventure
Does it look good?
I would say it looks good, but it's very hard to tell what the game actually is based on it.
Huh.
But yeah, I think it did look interesting.
Okay, well, I'll check it out.
I'm down to see more, but it's one of those not much gameplay.
I'm down to bang. I'm down to bang away on that game. I'm down to bang away on that game. Any other questions on Avowed before we move on from there? I want to say thanks. I did see Colts. I saw a couple other people's reviews or watched parts of them. I saw Fighting Cowboys. I think Fighting Cowboy covered it very well. So did Colt. They explained themselves quite well. I think context is the most important. Didn't go out searching for anybody's. It's just Colt's thumbnail was really good. I'll be honest. Well, I talked to Colt anyway, occasionally behind the scenes on Twitter. But when you when you post your video and you want to see where it is, I saw Colt's had a really good thumbnail, and I'm bad at thumbnails. Like, I'm just not good. It doesn't mean much. I don't know what to do on a thumbnail. I usually just go, here's a triangle in the corner so you know it's ACG. And his was this really nice looking. He's got a character in the center and like a lava bed and I think it said like Avowed, it's amazing maybe or something. I can't remember, but the thumbnail made me click, and I was like, oh, interesting, because thumbnails normally don't make me click. But it was one of those, and I obviously know him, so. But yeah, those are fun.
What do you make of that trend, by the way? Real quick side topic. I see a lot of reviews now stating the verdict either on the thumbnail or in the title. So it will say, this game is amazing, or maybe in the thumbnail it says amazing or terrible, and that's pretty much the verdict of the video you're about to watch. But
Right.
like, is there like what do you make of that? Is that something that
Well,
you're thinking of doing too? Like, what's going on
no,
with
there's
that?
there's two or three types of ways to do it, because I talk to people who don't ever want to do it, talk to people who've done it, talk to people who tried it. I would say when you do the score, your purpose, you know that you're going to get people who agree who will post, and you know you will also get the people who disagree. So you'll most likely, and this is checked out by SEO, if you do that, a much higher chance of getting comments. So
Engagement.
engagement, yeah. So whether it be thumbs up or thumbs down, they don't matter. And then comments, because you've got the high and the low, but you're purposely missing the middle ground. And I'm more of a, and not me, many people are more of a middle ground. Here is what it is, and then sort of go and find it. I'm going to be brutally honest, man. The reason why I don't like doing that is because I think that there's a ton of data in the review that might mean I like it for a reason you won't. And I really don't want to say a game's amazing. First of all, any game is not perfect. But I would not want somebody to be like, oh, man, Carrick said this game was amazing, but it's because the fun factor was really high, but the graphics look terrible, the music looked terrible, or music sounds terrible, but he didn't listen to the context of me saying, the music had good stingers or what have you, or yeah, maybe it is just the fun factor, which is pretty rare. If everything else is shit, that I would like it. But I don't know. And it's known when you look at SEO, for a fact that you will get more regardless of which side. It's just like when you have, certain face on, if you have a particular face on the thumbnail, you will get, it is the same thing, because most people's faces, they've gone out and got 6 or 7 versions of themselves going like, and that means bad or what have you. So they're doing the same thing without making the title appear that way. So it's all the same. And it's just YouTube. Yeah, I mean, people have to do it. I'm much happier with low views. I get good views, but I mean, I'm not unhappy with like lower views and somebody watching the damn thing and then going, I understand. I've had people who are really mad at me who are like, but I understand. Like, I made the game, but I get it. And I would be much happier with that over the long term. But that's just me. Everybody's different.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, you got to do it.
Yeah, it's also hard to condense the whole thing into like one word or
Dude,
one thing you're gonna put.
Terrible length on my review, man. That thing was shit. That was the one I hated. This review, I fucking hated it. It was 45 minutes before I edited it down. I never edited a video ever, but it was way too long, and it was because I was describing. I was just like, dude, what are you doing? I no lie, I hit record and I just started talking. I had my little fucking brain notes, and I was like, okay, here's the. I get done, I hit stop, and I look, and that fucking thing's 47 minutes. And I'm like, listen, nobody in the world needs over a 30-minute review to explain a game. You like talking to yourself, or you're going to do the big thing that goes on now, where you show a bunch of footage of other games, and you spend an hour talking about other titles before you get into the review. We see that all the time, too.
Oh, my God, dude.
And I looked at my thing, and I was like, dude, this is terrible. Like, what are you doing? And I had to go through it and go like, okay, you've repeated yourself, or you're
just trim it down.
Yeah,
overall.
or you're describing way too much. Somebody's going to be mad because you're describing way too much of a system. Really a bad review. Like, I would say probably the worst one I've ever recorded, because I had most of the time I don't have to edit other than trimming a front and a back and cleaning up something. This one I was just like, I think a good review for even a Dark Souls at most 15. If you can't do it in 15 minutes, at that point, maybe it's a podcast or it's a analysis, and it's not, and then start trimming out the bullshit. I mean, my starting had business in it, which I hate. I fucking hate it. But the starting of that review, I talked about business because I wanted to explain that the previews had changed so much, and I was quite surprised and impressed with those changes. And whoops. My tablet just fell off. Dog kicked it in his sleep. I was really unhappy with that, but I couldn't really review it or reverse it. It didn't make sense without some of that data, and I hate that shit. I hate throwing other games in. It's like, here, let me talk about Obsidian's past 10 games for a minute and a half so that you sit through the video. Fucking hate that shit.
I legit skip it because I've seen it so many times. Like, I don't know which one it was that was comparing Assassin's Creed Black Flag with another current game.
Black Flag. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
and they spent like 2-3 minutes talking about why this game sucks because it's not Black Flag and things that game had done that this one didn't. Just to give an example, I forget exactly what game it was.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, that to me is like, dude, tell me about this game you're reviewing.
Yeah. But it was a bad one. I appreciate anybody who watched it because I was not happy. I was certainly not as happy with it as I should have been. Moving on from Avowed, let's talk about the rest of the game's news. Bunch of layoffs. The biggest one was Crytek, man. That sucks, dude. Crytek laid off some people. I think it was 400 people total. I could be wrong on the total. I got DM'd about it and then looked up some news, and I'm almost sure it said 400 total people. They basically said the same thing. A lot of the other companies are saying that they got hit. They're working on Hunt Showdown, and they're trying to continue that. But that regardless, I think they also said they stopped working on another game. Was it Crisis 4? I think it might have been Crisis 4. There we go. Thomas Kelly. Thank you very much, sir. He says it was 15% of their staff. Thank you. 15% of their 400 staff equaling 60. Yeah.
That's still
that's
big.
that's
big
sucks,
layoff.
Man. It sucks. And it's rough because, Hunt Showdown, I don't know what the numbers are, but Hunt Showdown to me is, a service game that shows that it can be done very well.
One of the better ones out there. Yep.
Yeah, it just feels like it's hitting everybody, no matter, really no matter what group you're with or how good you are, the one guy for Avowed, I think, not Avowed, I'm sorry, what was the Magic using? Immortals of Avium, I think. They were saying that, funding had dried up for new games completely. And I do feel that that's what we're seeing is that some of these companies are going around searching for funding. They're searching a long time and then they're not getting it and they get the cancel, which is what happened with Minmay Games, the guys who did Desperados and stuff like that. So, yeah, it sucks, man. It's absolutely like it guts me a little bit too because, well, of course it would, but not everybody's going to stay in gaming, right? I mean, I know you and I've talked about it and you're like, oh, maybe they'll go somewhere else, but I feel like those somewhere else's aren't all hiring. So it's like, where do they go at that point?
It's kind of interesting because the industry overall is growing, right? Every year, the gaming industry.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're seeing layoffs across the board for a year, 2 years consistently now.
Right.
So it's almost like there's a disconnect because the industry is growing, but we're not seeing the workforce match. You would maybe expect more people being hired overall if there's a bigger pie to be had.
Yeah, if there was a bigger pie, you would. I just got DM'd about joining YouTube or Patreon. Yeah, just join. If you're a YouTuber right now or YouTube and you want to join, just join here. Don't worry about going to Patreon. It'll send you to our Discord anyway, and I absolutely appreciate it. It's definitely awesome to have support like that because I am middling, as somebody was joking about. I did say I was middling. I'm middling. I'm okay. If it was 15% of their staff, oh yeah, they're shelving Crisis 4, putting a chunk of their devs back on Hunt. Damn. Long videos are good for sleeping though. Those reviews that just recap the story for like an hour are great. I did see a guy, I can't remember his name. Wait a minute. Gingerlicious? No. I think Ginger's in his name. There's a guy who just basically says, I'm going to tell you the entire story of the game, and there's no thought on what it's doing, if it's good or bad. I think that's who it is, but they're like 1 or 2 hours long. And it's like, here is the story for Metal Gear Solid 4. You go here, and then this happens, and you go here, and it's like, I could see that working. That's like perfectly functional kind of video for somebody. I feel like I would die inside doing it, so I absolutely appreciate that person can do it so well, because they do it really well. But damn, you could fall asleep to that. I sleep to 3-hour Mass Effect lore videos. Oh, damn. PK says the industry is growing, but the cost of making games is as well. Considering how the independent game dev is going extinct, the industry is beholden to margins and shareholders. I'm not saying I don't agree, but I also disagree because I think there's a lot more indies, and I think that people like to blame shareholders and stuff, but just because you have dev behind your name doesn't mean you're saving babies. We've dealt enough with that. Actually, Remedy earning royalties in Alan Wake 2 made me cheer. Yeah, it's only taken like
they finally monetized the game.
Yeah, good for them, man. Really happy to see them making money on a game. I think it was you and I talking about this. Was it you and I talking about Remedy?
I think we were talking about it in voice
I was saying
chat,
they're like the fucking unicorn of
or...
developers, where everybody else, if they didn't make money for that long, would never be making games still. And somehow,
dude, rough journey for them.
Yeah, especially because they have not beloved. Some of them are beloved, but they've got these really big, for the most part, well-liked games, and they seem to sell somewhat well, but their cost of making them seems to be elevated compared to everybody else. And it shows. Control really looked good, and Alan Wake 2 was phenomenal looking. So there's a cost there. What about you, man? What's your next favorite game? Like, what's something coming up? Like, is it Yakuza? Is it it's Monster Hunter? I assume is one of them.
I really think it's Monster Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's gonna be awesome. I liked what I played in the beta, and there's something about it that makes me think they're focusing more on story as well, so that the campaign is gonna be much more engaging than the world campaign, which was pretty much just an excuse to beat the hell out of a bunch of innocent monsters. They're just chilling in their habitats, and you rock up to them, with your hammer or whatever.
Be like you and I taking our sledgehammer from the backyard and then taking a flight to the Amazon and beating the shit out of a bunch of fucking parrots.
Yes.
Like, I mean, think about it that way. Think about it, the Johnny and Carrick ride. We jump on a fucking airplane, we parachute out of the top of the airplane, we land, and then we proceed to beat the fuck out of all the sloths in the local area.
We specifically go to their habitat.
Yeah. And then all we do is collect their claws, and then we hang it from our armor to then go back out and kill more of them
we're just
while wearing their best friend's skin.
Yeah, we're just farming their friends for skins.
Yeah, I love it, though.
Rough.
Ransom
I think
says,
it's that, man.
Oh, yeah. What about South of Midnight? Because Random said he saw some previews. Did anything in South of Midnight interest you, or is that a non interesting game?
No, I did like it. What surprised me was the freedom you had to jump around, as you showed in your preview. That really caught me off guard. I thought it was going to be much more on rails for that. So yeah, I think that could be really, really fun. It reminded me of that. I think it's called Korra.
Yes.
People might correct me. Yeah, Korra had a little bit of that vibe, except it doesn't have the stop motion.
I think it's very much like Korra. There's a little bit of Fable in it, and I don't mean I don't want anybody to be like, oh my god, he's saying it's as good as Fable. It's not what I'm talking about. There's Kina. Thank you, Bridge of Spirits is what we're talking about.
Oh, I don't know what I said, but
you said Korra, but that's the platinum.
Korra.
I think that South of Midnight, especially because it goes to the South and it covers their mythology, that I've always found super interesting. Crossroads and the different bottle trees, all that kind of stuff. And the fact that the writer from it, who by the way is a white guy, because I don't know why people were saying it was something else. He lived there when he was a child, and he wrote a bunch of stories when he would explore. Like kids, if you're exploring with your friend, you're like, I have a sword and there's a bad guy. Yeah, I don't know if you ever did that, but you probably didn't have forests, but we would do that. You'd go out in the woods, you'd explore, you'd make up stories especially when you're young. And he wrote them down, and that's sort of where this all came from. And I loved that idea of because I wish I had my stories from a kid. They probably
children's tales and stuff like that.
Yeah. Shadows. I believe the Road Crew simulating game is coming out as well. Roadcraft by Focus is coming out as well. Bloom and Rage is coming out, which is the Telltale. Sorry, not Telltale, but the Don't Nod game. That's like Stranger Things. When
Oh
is
yeah.
33 Expeditions coming out? Or 33, yeah, 33 Expeditions? Isn't that what it's called?
So let me try to find that.
SBZ asks, any thoughts on Mind's Eye made by ex-GTA devs? Yeah, it's a good question, and I'm sorry we did not actually, other than mentioning it as a title that was shown, it looked like a GTA-style game in some weird way, plus Watch Dogs Legion, but it looked early, so it was hard to get any grasp. Did you see
Yeah,
that, the one
hard
by
to see.
Leslie Leslie Bezos?
No, it was enough
Benzies?
to get
Benzies?
me interested,
Okay.
but yeah, I didn't see enough of that one.
What about 33?
And then 33 is coming out on the 24th of April.
Oh, that's a while. Okay, that's a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be a busy
But
time.
yeah, that game looks good.
Any thoughts on Tides of Annihilation? We did talk about it starting the podcast. I don't have much more till we see.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that's pretty much it for February. There has been a bunch of stuff already.
Yeah, man, it's a busy time. I know. I think most of the people in my Discord now have switched over to Avowed, but then you've got Monster Hunter. But the big one, or the next like boom big one that's coming up, is of course Yakuza, and it feels like Yakuza is going to do quite well. I think they're all going to do quite well, even though it's a tighter time frame. Oh, new Digimon looks great. Yeah, that popped up. So did Borderlands. Oh, yeah, Wizard just said that Borderlands also popped up. Digimon, people were not even knowing what Digimon was in our Discord, which makes total sense, right? It's if you saw just Pokemon, you wouldn't know. But I thought that was funny. People were like, "What the fuck is a Digimon?" I thought when I was a kid, I thought Digimon was cooler than Pokemon for whatever reason. Maybe it was just a transformation.
Very much so. I liked it
well?
more than I liked it. And I think I still remember some of those Digimon, at least looking at the trailer. I was definitely getting the familiar.
Maybe
vibe.
N64 maybe, or Wii? Did they have Digimon? One of those systems, Nintendo's had. I feel like Nintendo's had one or two that I've played. I know they had this might be going super far back, but I'm pretty sure there was a Game Boy Advance or a DS game of Digimon. I'm sure there's been a bunch.
I never played it, but yeah,
no.
I think you're right. It would be cool if it's a full either open world or just adventure game, and not just
not just a
normal
collected
anime.
Yeah,
because a lot of the anime games have a very generic template that they follow, and it's the cookie cutter like RPG that I've played like a couple of them, and they're pretty much the same game with a different skin.
Yeah. I can agree with that.
And then you were saying Yakuza, that's on the 21st of February. Yeah. Big month.
It's nuts. Big month. And here's the crazy thing. Avowed, way bigger than I thought. Easily maybe 20 to 25 hours if you golden pathed it and did some upgrading, and then much, much, much longer if you wanted to, explore and do side quests. Yakuza, we can just assume, going to be a fairly sizable game. Easily in that area just for the golden path, the 40, 50. Then you look at Monster Hunter, which... to beat it, Monster Hunters have never been I don't feel they've been incredibly uncomfortable to beat lengthwise. Usually it's like, 40 to 60 if you were to golden path it. The stories are never really like about beating it, but beating it is possible. But time in Monster Hunter, that's going to be nuts. Monster Hunter is probably going to be the big one, right? And then we have Shadows, which is also going to be, seems to be huge. Shadows, they said, is pre-selling at Odyssey numbers, which is really successful for them too. So they'll probably, I know there's DLC planned for that. So that one will continue. Monster Hunter will get DLC, I'm assuming. I think Monster Hunter World got what did Monster Hunter World get? Did it get a Frozen Land?
Iceborne.
Iceborne. Yeah. So...
yeah, they're already confirming different DLCs that will drop, or like content patches. There's one for summer. I think there's another one around April.
Damn, that's crazy, man. It's crazy. We've got a lot of stuff going on when it comes to those games. And then Kingdom Come. I mean, Kingdom Come, yesterday I was talking to somebody who was like, I've chosen not to get into Kingdom Come at all until there's some patches and until they have, post Shadows or whatever, because they really want to dive into it. So it's like, oh Christ, that's gonna be a long time. Dario says, what's God End pathing? It's a golden path. Basically following the golden path means, for the most part, doing the main level or the main quests and completing the game, seeing the starting to the end of the game. And because some people play it that way, they don't do much of the side quests. They want to see the main plot. They go from point A to point B, and then usually that'll require splitting off occasionally to level up. Golden Path is, it's a normal thing. I mean, I know a lot of people who Golden Path a lot of games where I'll be like, what'd you think about this?
Yeah.
Witcher 3 is a main one where they'll tell me how long Witcher 3 took. Yeah, no worries. They'll say how long Witcher 3 took. And I'll be all, how did you do Witcher? Because I Golden Path. I'll be like, even when I look at their numbers in Golden Path, I'm like, damn, they're a good player. They must have really highlighted the use of alchemy or whatever.
Yeah, because games like you were saying, Monster Hunter, the thing with that one is if you really just want to do the main story, you have to be quite good at the game, actually, because what tends to happen is that you're gonna hit some difficult monsters, and then you're gonna need better gear, and then to get better gear, you need to do a bunch of hunts. And so that's where it inflates the time a great deal.
Let me ask you something, man. This came up. We'll continue on this discussion. If anybody has any questions, feel free. But I want to ask Johnny something. So this came up yesterday. We were talking in the Discord, and the conversation turned to golden pathing. It turned to reward for what time you spend in a game. And there are games, not just Ubisoft, by the way, because I'm sure that'll be the first thing people think about, but they're not the only ones who've done this. But there'll be a game that comes out, and it's a big game. And then later on, you'll get a micro or a difficulty check / adjustment that doubles or triples your experience points, or you can set the difficulty down. Do you personally, not as a review like me, but as a gamer, if I told you I played a game and I had it on easy, and you told me you played the game and you had it on hard, what would the conversation be like? What would you think of the other? Would that impact you taking on any of their opinions about the game?
Right. So is there maybe more weight to someone's opinion if they played,
or is there maybe more weight to the other person's because they weren't forced to grind a thing? Because that's a real, you brought it up, and I wanted to point it out when you brought up that you might have to go back and grind some games where they changed the difficulty. The grind is reduced. Skill cap might be reduced too, but the grind is reduced. So when they talk about, let's say, the plot, they might have experienced the plot in a better or more smooth way than you did, who might have had to stop the main plot for 8 hours, and you can't remember why you were supposed to care about the next plot point. So I was just wondering, what do you think?
I think overall the experience is so different if you play a game in easy mode.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that your experience isn't interesting or isn't good to hear about. And in some ways, like you say, it might be a smoother experience.
Yeah.
If you just look at how the story is presented. But I really believe that the challenges in games are also an integral part of why you remember them.
Yeah.
Because when I look back at some of these games that I liked that were difficult, those are some of the parts that, I remember rocking up in Sekiro to the field and the guy screaming his name.
It's the best part of that game.
On the horse.
Yeah.
My name, right? My name
amazing.
Is blah, blah, blah. I forgot his name, to be fair. But, the moment stuck with me. And yes, at first it was a hard fight, right? So I learned it. I went through a little learning curve there. And I think that's a big part of why I remember it, because it was epic. And for the first time, it was challenging. And I really think if you don't have that, you're going to remember other things, but not so much, I think, those moments, those overcoming moments.
And then I just want to point out, we are also combining that somebody may not be as good at the games, so that their version of difficulty, ignoring the easy, medium, and hard, but if they're good and they turn it on lower, you think there might be a chance that if you're good and you turn it on lower, you might not the dopamine, serotonin, fucking adrenal gland not being activated might impact slightly your memory of it. You want me to tell you something crazy about the science of that?
Go for it.
It's the opposite. If you are under a high stress situation, there's a very high chance not only will you not learn, but you won't have a short-term memory of it. It's why you have people get in fights, can't remember anything about what they've learned for years, because it goes directly to the primal brain. And so when
because you go into like flight or flight,
and
fight
or flight, but it also works in games. You and I've talked about this, where by the way, this is slightly different, but where if you get killed really quick, you're like, I don't even know what I was supposed to learn in this fight. Like, I died that quick, but it's just a little science there. But I agree with everything you're saying. Yeah, it's the thing though, it also depends on the game, which is such a cop out, but. I'm going to give you an example that you will remember, because I don't think it'll ever leave our brains for the bad taste in our mouths. That fucking piece of shit spider mech dude in Surge 2. You remember that guy? That boss? That POS?
The one that like flipped around and stuff?
I don't have a good memory or even really much of a memory of that, because my brain at some point actively wanted to get past it and then deleted it. Like, because I think we remember and revisit the memories we want to remember. So you and I remember the guy yelling, yes, because of the difficulty, but we got to admit the guy yelling was probably the best part of that.
Was probably pretty cool too.
Even an early, easier game player who put it on, or who used a cheat code. Let's say they used a mod from File Nexus or whatever. They would still have that moment of that poignant moment of this guy speaking in a game with very little voice. Very little voice. That dude breaks the silence of that game. That's why they are master storytellers sometimes. Not all the time. Sorry. Not all the time, but sometimes. And that was awesome. Because that silence is so deadly in those games. And the solo feeling. Everything's quiet. You hear the creak of somebody's skeleton going up and down stairs in a Dark Souls, whatever. And then that guy's like, bitch, I'm going to fuck you up. And you're like, what the shit is going on right now? It was so great, man. That's such a good memory, dude. That elevated that game. And I was already enjoying it, but that definitely kept me going. You know, when that happened, I was all, okay, okay, bitch.
All right.
You yelled at me. How dare you? Hubert the Mad, welcome to supported Discord access. Thank you much for doing that, man. It absolutely helps when you do. Seriously, I truly do appreciate whenever you guys jump in. We try to make sure the Discord's an awesome place too, to play games and hang out with us. So I hope you enjoy it. You should be able to join pretty quickly. It usually goes fast. I enjoyed Elden Ring more after adding God mode and a rocket launcher, the Deagle says. Okay, hey, there's, I mean, some people don't want to blast through the hard mode. XCOM game requires reviews at hardest difficulties. That would be weird. Don't think I've had one. I can't say what game it is because this is completely, I'm sure, still NDA'd. But I did have one game that I thought was pretty cool. Power, boom. They had a save game. You had to take a picture of the end game screen to review the game, and I thought that was really cool. I'm going to switch.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it was a very
requirement right there.
It was awesome. I loved it.
I do think I'm now thinking about the prospect of needing to beat a game in hard mode, and that game specifically XCOM, right? There is something though, maybe not hard mode, but
Continue.
if you play,
let these guys out.
Okay. If you play that game in easy, you just won't have the excruciating experience of lovingly naming a soldier after maybe a friend, trying to take care of them, trying to protect them, keep them alive throughout missions, and then having a rough mission where they end up dying. And for me, that was really awesome. Was really made it like high stakes, and every decision mattered. And yes, when the annoying serpent ladies dodged my 95% attack and ended up retaliating, that really hurt. But it was also, again, memorable, right? That type of stuff will stick with me pretty much forever. I still remember Carrick's character in my XCOM 2 campaign was basically like Rambo. I would put him in the worst situations sometimes, and that guy was just unbreachable.
Did he actually live?
Dude, he lived until the end of the campaign.
No shit.
One of the few.
Oh damn, that's cool.
Yeah, he was like actually my goat in the entire thing.
Yeah, because I do agree. Naming your character, especially, I do sort of like, I guess, permadeath on side characters in those games. Because, yeah, I had all the guys from the Discord, yourself, Absy, John, Silver, Reg, take down all those guys. And when they die, I would DM them in real life and be like, dude, you piece of shit, you died on me. You know, like, what are you doing? Like, that kind of stuff is always so fun. I do like permadeath in the RTS stuff as long as, you know, it's not too excruciating on the difficulty. I loved with XCOM, you'd shore somebody up and you know they were hurt, but you just didn't have anybody else, you know, and you'd be like, this guy's, you know, he's busted up. And so I have to sort of change how I play, but then the way you played originally to get him busted up is the best way he played. So then you had to change your strategy on the strategy, which that's sort of the master of those type of games, is that you're changing the strategy that got you there is no longer the strategy that will continue moving you forward, but the strategy that got you there is what you built your character as. So you're like, what the hell do I do? You know what I mean? And there's like, there is a distinct, and then with XCOM, you never know what they're going to throw. Well, not only XCOM, but with those better turn-based strategy games in particular, which is where I think this shines, you never know what the game halfway through is going to throw at you, whether it be a new enemy or whatever. And how many times in an XCOM, I cannot tell you. Most of my guys are hurt, but I'm alive, and I'm really close to something, and then like an enemy spawns in, you know, or something, and you're like, oh my God, what do I do now? And you have to, I love the ability to think on that, you know. It's a difference between speed chess and chess. It's a difference between, you know, a Magic the Gathering game and like some of the other card-based, you know, they all have their own sexiness to them. But XCOM in particular was really good at that. They knew what they were doing, man. It's too bad we won't see another one, or it doesn't sound like we're going to see another one, which is, that sort of kills me.
Aren't they making XCOM 3?
No, because the guy left, right? And because they did, how did it go? They did Midnight Suns, and then is that how it went? Or am I thinking of a different? I feel like he left. I feel like they had said that I feel like there was some news that said that there wouldn't be another one. If I'm wrong, that'd be great. But for whatever reason, could have been a nightmare I had, because I really like those games. Could have been a stayed up late and had a nightmare about it. Dario says Jagged Alliance 2, the most I was ever attached to Virtual Soldiers. Yeah, Jagged Alliance is tough, man. Jagged Alliance, I think, is harder than XCOM. I don't know if everybody agrees with that. I thought Jagged Alliance was super hard. Thomas says, yeah, Midnight Suns, and then the main guy left who created XCOM has left. Does that mean they can't create another one? No, but you know, next one could be great. I just don't know if he might have been the force that caused XCOM to be made. You know what I mean? Like the creative force, like pushing it and saying, no, I want to do an XCOM or I'm leaving. Now you can't say that because you've left. That's one of the questions we got in Discord too, that I thought was interesting. It was, well, I'll read a couple actually here. We'll go through these. These are some good ones. All right, Black Sun says, what are some classic games like SNES that you think would be brought back in a modern time? A full redo, it looks like. What made me think of this was I was thinking about Zombies Ate My Neighbors and how, with its randomization of items, it already felt like a roguelike. That's a good point. See, that's a good point. That's why whenever anybody says roguelike is brand new or whatever, I'm like, dude, roguelike is called roguelike because, well, the name.
It's like Rogue.
It's
and Rogue is
legitimately
old as
like,
balls,
yeah, it's
dude.
old as balls.
Yeah.
Like that game, cavemen were fucking playing the game with some rocks and shit.
It's like around the time that prostitutes appeared.
Yeah, exactly. It's about it's back then. You see some graffiti on a Roman wall or something like that.
There's some overlap.
Rogue. Is there a like? And what would? How about this? Because he says that it's roguelike. What's an old game that had a special something in it that
Dude, I have a
could
specific
benefit?
one.
Go for it.
That I think would work. I think it was called Marvel Gems because you were collecting gems like Thanos, Infinity Stones, and you played. So you could choose from a roster of Marvel Avengers. So you had Iron Man. I think you had Wolverine and Hulk. I forget all of them. But you would play as each of them. It was a single player game, kind of like a side scroller. Absolutely loved it back in the day.
Damn,
and that could be a cool like roguelike idea. I would love to see it in 3D instead of side scroller.
Right.
Like a well produced type thing. But that to me would be awesome. So you have different characters, each of them with different builds and stuff you could do, and then maybe you get different powers or different power-ups as you go.
Mine would be and I think that Returnal did this. I legitimately think Returnal is a good deal of the game I'm going to mention, and that's Space Harrier. So Space Harrier was a Sega Master System game where you ran forward as a guy and you flew. You could run on the ground or you could leap up and you could fly, and you shot enemies. There was 18 levels, I know, because it was one of the first games that was hard mode right from the start. And you just shot enemies. They had a boss, and you moved on. It did 3D effects coming towards you. But really, it is it is Returnal. But what I would like to see is Space Harrier done that way, because Space Harrier was a very sci-fi 1970s chrome, the occasional, like a chrome part on your body. He was just in a pair of pants running forward with a chrome gun, fighting like dragons breathing fire on an alien planet. And it was more... Even though it was hard as balls in the later levels, and the 3D version was even harder, it was fantastical and happier. It was more of a saccharine level instead of the dire Returnal space cosmic horror level. And so if Returnal took that fun, sort of colorful aspect, even if a mod did this, I'd be happy. I would love to see Space Harrier go. And I would love to see the Returnal guys do Space Harrier. I actually think that they play so alike, other than the roguelike thing. They play so alike that you could take Space Harrier, turn it into Returnal with the 3D, and be set. And that would be mine. That would be phenomenal. Zaxby says, have you guys ever written off a game at first and then revisited and loved it? After okay, I'll get to that in a second. It returned and then loved it. My cheap one is Fallout 3. I think that'll always be my answer.
Fallout 3?
Yeah.
You didn't like it initially?
No, the first 4 or 5 times I thought the game was fucking
you gave
balls.
it 4 tries? Kudos to you, man.
Well, we were talking about reviews and do you pay attention after? I wasn't a reviewer, and I just kept having people that some of them I didn't trust because they like a lot of games, but there were a couple people that what they explained sounded really fun, and the way they explained it, I was like, man, I'm not getting it. I don't quite get it. And really what was just happening was the starting, it was just so brown. It was that I've told you before, it's just a brown simulator. And I was like, this game looks like trash. It doesn't play well. And I wouldn't say it looked like trash. I was just like, I don't know what you guys are doing, but I can't seem to get past the starting a little bit into it and figure out really what's enjoyable. And then I finally did. And yeah, I loved it.
So
what about you?
I had that with Sekiro too. I didn't like it initially. Second playthrough, couple years later, really enjoyed it for what it was.
Second playthrough? Did you beat it all the way the first time?
I did. Yeah.
Wow, that's some balls. So you beat the game.
I was streaming it.
Oh.
I was streaming it, not really having a great time, but just stubbornly I wanted to, beat the challenge for the stream. In hindsight, I wish I would have just left it and come back to it later. I think I would have had a better experience. But either way, second run, really came to appreciate it.
You know what kills me too, dude, is the reason. I mean, it did change the way I treated games after Fallout, because I realized, just like TV shows or movies, sometimes you need that second attempt, and you're like, holy shit, I'm so happy I actually went back to this. And some of those experiences are my favorite experiences in gaming. So I'm like, I will go back to a game, especially if I hear people talk. I've gone back to Death Stranding 4 times. But Death Stranding, here's the thing. Death Stranding is Death Stranding right at the starting. That's the difference between Death Stranding and some other games that I've returned to and liked, is that I know that they add stuff, but the general gist is always the general gist. And so therefore that one just doesn't speak to me as a game. But for the most part, I think returning is pretty smart. He says, also, which professional wrestler would you pick to be in your tag team match against Rikishi and Kane? So a 3-person or 2-person tag, Rikishi, Kane. Who would you pick to be your tag team partner? Rikishi and Kane. That is an odd one. Razor Ramon. Just because I would probably lose the match and then just hang out with Razor Ramon afterwards. Jesus Crust says, you're given the ability to handle the release date of every video game for an entire year, assuming the power always allows devs to get the game done in the best state possible on day one. How would you schedule releases? Would you space out big game releases or leave a bunch of games to come out in 1 month? Oh, dude, that'd be amazing. You control it and you're like, February, deal with it. All of you. First, second, third, fourth, fifth. I think the normal answer is space it out, right? Like, would anybody choose a different answer unless they were just an anarchist? I mean, would you, if you controlled the release date of a bunch of big games, wouldn't you just say across the entire year? I mean, right?
Yeah, spread it out for sure.
Yeah, spread it out. Yeah. I would look at like a summertime game and try to aim that for summer. But I mean, otherwise, dude, you'd be an anarchist. Can you imagine? That would be so evil. Be all, everything February. Just go.
Yeah, everything February.
Everything February. Horizon Zero Dawn 3 would still have an issue somehow. Those poor guys. And then you have the Take-Two report on your list of things.
Yes. So I don't know if we want to cover this in much detail, but there, it was a pretty big report that came out with a bunch of data regarding console ownership and overall direction for how they're planning on expanding their games and stuff like that.
Did you see anything on it that was like particularly noteworthy?
Yes, I'm trying to pull it up.
Ben says 1 game a day, so we have 365 amazing games. Go ahead.
So let me get the data here. So this is also based on what I said before about the industry growing was also based on this. So they have some data, right, about like market opportunity and the way it's just been going up steadily in the last like quarters. So since like 2003, and then the estimation is that it's just going up, like the global video game market overall, just going up, right? In the billions, just going up. And that, again, that called my attention because of all the layoffs and everything. So it made me think of that disconnect. But they also had some interesting stats. So if I can find here, they had estimated 3.3 billion global video game players in 2024. 3.3 billion.
That's not. It's about 40%.
How many humans are there alive?
We were at like 7.8 last time I looked, but that was a while ago. But I'll look.
Dude,
it's probably twice that now. We'll have to see. Go ahead.
So like a third.
Yeah.
Are gamers?
We're at 8. We're at 8 now.
Yeah. Oh, we're at 8 now.
Yeah. But almost 50%. I mean,
dude, it's nuts.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So we're no longer the nerd being mocked because we play games. That's cool to see. And then 94 plus million consoles. So when it comes to like current consoles and stuff, I believe this is. And I think it was basically like 1/3 of those was Xbox, and then Sony was about double, I believe, around just approximately, which is, I think, normal. They tend to sell more consoles. But yeah, I think those are sort of the highlights here. The other thing I wanted to highlight is that they had here a few bullet points on how they want to expand their PC games in the future.
Mhm.
So it was a very specific thing in terms of like strategy. And if I can dig that up so I'm not getting stuff wrong. So for console and PC titles, their key growth drivers are virtual currency sales, so similar to GTA Online,
Right.
add-on content for key titles, including season passes, DLC packs, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And then post-launch monetization plans as well. And then certain free-to-play games and mobile titles being brought to PC as well. So those are their main strategies for growing their PC.
Well, they better do a fucking better job than GTA Trilogy.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
See, so, and a lot of this growth is mobile side. Definitely we have growth everywhere. You've got the total number.
Yeah, because they got Zynga, right? So they have a huge mobile.
And Microsoft, ended up with Activision. They got mobile as well. Mobile's huge. The idea that they want to take mobile and put them on the console doesn't bother me, because some games I played that were mobile originally, like Assassin's Creed Liberation, I think was originally the PlayStation Portable, if I remember right, or whatever. It was moved over. I enjoyed it for what it was. It's possible, but their idea of growth is also way different than everybody else's. So if you're a small company and they tell you that, 50% of people are playing games, in no way, shape, or form does that indicate that a small company can suddenly make games for more people. That's the thing that always bothers me about any of these reports, is because, especially when it's by the company, they're coming from, especially these guys, they're coming from a position where they can effectively leverage that. They can release on their own platform. That's if they wanted. It's not the same thing as somebody who has to go with Epic because Epic pays them extra money to develop. And so if we want to talk it as a YouTube video, you could say, boom, it's growing. What the hell's wrong? Why are we laying people off? That'd be your YouTube video, and you'd be able to do it. But the actual discussion is, it's growing. How does that impact 8,000 tiers of game developers?
Yeah.
And that's where you get all kinds of game developers making games in so many ways. Mobile, free to play on mobile plays way different than premium on mobile. Because I have some premium games on mobile where I'm like, oh, wow, as long as it's not motion or touch, I'm like, dude, these are actually pretty fucking good. But they're way different than any of the monetized ones. And I would say on PC, there are times where I'm playing a free-to-play game where I'm like, wow, this almost plays like a normal game. And then, you get to a certain point, and maybe that's when you do your monetization of some kind. Your free-to-play turns into a, maybe something about it makes you want to spend money. There's all levels, man. Yeah. And then also they're indicating worldwide, and America can't sell into some nations at all, American companies, or Sony can't sell in, what was it, like 100 countries they can't sell in right now, and Microsoft can't sell in a bunch, Nintendo. So the growth is there, but what they don't say is that 1 billion of those, 90% of developers can't even get to, and then another 1 billion would require blah, and then another 1 billion don't have the economy. Another 1 billion don't have the internet to do a free-to-play. Like Australia, whenever I'm talking to anybody who's from Australia and we talk about online games, they're like, dude, if this game doesn't do gangbusters day one, I can't play in a local server in Australia. There's nobody playing. So they have to connect into America, which then lowers their pay, So there's a lot of nuance to it. But
yeah, that is a good point, because we were talking about the pie expanding. But actually, it's not as simple as that, because it might be that the slice of the pie, for example, for Take-Two, it's growing consistently.
Yeah.
And they are in a, privileged position in that sense. But maybe this, someone else's slice of the pie, or a certain contingent of devs, for them maybe it's shrinking or it's not growing.
Or
And then
everybody
other
shows up
stuff-
and gets a different size fork.
Yes,
that's-
and then maybe it's not growing, but other stuff like costs, margins, those things are going up. So
Yeah.
for them, the operation now is harder to keep up too because of those things.
Yeah, it's good though. I mean, I love it. I love the fact that many people are playing games. It's awesome to me that multiple people are.
I think that's what I'm taking from it, that stat of 3.3 billion gamers.
That's why
insane.
It's crazy, and that's why I always tell people whenever you're talking about games, man, if you get in a group that doesn't involve your friends, dude, you have to add some context to it, because if you don't, you could have somebody who, for example, Avowed. If I say, "Oh, Avowed isn't a good Pillars game," they're going to be like, "What in the fuck are you talking about? I got into gaming yesterday. What the fuck's a Pillars game?" And you're like, "Oh, well, it's this other world," and they're like, "I don't care. I've no connection to a past Pillars game. What the fuck does that, what connection does that have with me? I don't give a shit that Final Fantasy VII was awesome back in the fat, pudgy PlayStation days. I care that Final Fantasy VII is good now." And you have to add some context in your discussions, because you can't, it's so weird, Johnny, because how can you say this thing is growing out of an effective number and then pretend the effective number has the exact same experience as you do, even though you just added their fucking numbers to the total? That's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense at all. And we have that all the time. Every day, we get it all the time. Like the dogmatic requirement that everybody somehow, the moment they're entered in, has a clone of every experience you've had up until that point. I mean, we've seen it somebody will say, "I'm jumping into this game." People will be like, "First one was better." It's like, I don't fucking care. They'll say in the same context, "I just got my first console. I'm 19. I just joined the Discord. I'm going to do XCOM 2, whatever." And you have somebody be like, "Well, technically you should play 1 first or whatever."
Yeah.
Like, dude.
You should play Diablo 2.
Yeah, go back to Diablo 2. Go get your CRT fucking monitor out of the closet and your ancient ass PC and play Diablo 2 before you're allowed to talk to me about Diablo 3 and 4. With this growth, we got monetization, we've got mobile, we've got streaming. All of those are hitting big. Streaming in particular is hitting big. GeForce Now switched their billing from an external to internal, meaning they saw some profits there that they were not happy losing to an external creditor, so they took their profits inwards, which I think shows that there's some success there. Mobile devices are getting more powerful. Do you know what mobile devices don't have? The control scheme, though.
Yeah, and
Sucks
probably
balls.
never will, right? Unless you have the external stuff like
somebody's
stuff
going to
that
come up
hands-on.
with something that you and I will be like, "How did we not see this coming?" I just don't know what this will be, but this many people are looking at mobile, and the processors are powerful as shit in a mobile device. Not powerful enough to run. We're not talking about that, but run some pretty fantastic games.
I mean, dude, you can run like what's the free to play game, Genshin, that looked really good.
Death Stranding's on the iPhone.
Yeah.
Like,
oh really?
Yeah. There's a fucking Assassin's Creed now. Like, dude, and it's pretty crazy, but the control's still the control, right? You're still stuck.
Yeah.
Or you're adding a controller to it, and now you've got to get a claw. It's like at some point,
you
somebody's going to come up with
have the ones that
it.
attach, right? Where you have a thing, and those, I guess, are the best you can do.
Maybe you'll just have, how you plug in your earbuds used to be wired, most are wireless now. Instead, you'll take this thing off, you put it on your temples, and that's how you control the game.
Yeah, I think that would suck though, because part of the enjoyment is the tactile. Pushing a button type thing, I
agree with that completely. Moving on from there, Stalker 2's patch had over, I mentioned this earlier, but I just want to say 1,700 changes, including big bug fixes as well. So that's awesome for anybody who wants to return to that, who had bugs. I know we've had a couple people with save bugs, which just fucking sucks. Hopefully that'll get fixed with this. Real Bug says, "What is the most multi-genre game you can think of? Not in terms of total lores, but different gameplay elements." My answer might be Valheim. So a game that has the most stuff in it. The most different kinds of gameplay. What was the game by Jack Black that was an RTS plus a shooter plus a third-person like slasher? It was like Rock of Ages? Didn't that... Wasn't Rock of Ages... Ooh, my camera messed up for a second. Wasn't Rock of
Yeah.
Ages a game that had like 3 or 4 or 5 different gameplay genres?
I
within
think
the
so.
same?
Yeah. I never played it, but yeah, I heard
Brutal
that.
Legend. Thank you, Dario. Yeah, Brutal Legend. Of course.
Yeah, there you go. I was thinking of the It Takes Two game. Where you have a lot of different like mini games, and at one point you're doing like a fighting game. It just changes up all the time.
Yeah, and the new one looks
Really
to
good
have
one.
10,000 times more than that.
Yeah, dude.
That shit's nuts. That looks.
Yeah.
It could be too much. Who knows? But yeah, that looks crazy. Yeah, those are both good. Now that I think about it, both those, I think your example might even be better. I think there might be more in that one. Multi-genre. Valheim is the survival / third-person action. Yakuza. Aries says Yakuza. That's actually, yeah, Yakuza.
Yeah.
Yakuza's got. I mean, and we are counting mini games. I think that's fair because Assassin's Creed would be up there because they've got some mini games on the side and some fucking like training courses and shadows where you're shooting arrows and stuff. But yeah, those are all good. Zaxby says, does alcohol count as an in real life strength buff? I once drank a bottle of Jim Beam with my little brother, and we had an impromptu push-up contest. I did 72 push-ups that night. Nobody would have believed me if it weren't on video. Also, how many push-ups are your personal records? That's awesome.
Damn, that is a lot of push-ups. I have to say I have the opposite effect. If I'm even a little bit drunk, I just have way less control over my body. I don't know, maybe it is also maybe to do with my neurological thing where like walking is already super clumsy for me, but I don't feel in any way, shape, or form
Better.
it helps me.
Yeah, right.
Not at all. And in fact, I have video evidence of it too, because going through university, I played in some bands and we did concerts and stuff. And in some of those, I was drunk, and others I wasn't. And you can see in the recording the ones where I'm drunk. At the time of doing it, I thought I was doing amazing. But you know what? In hindsight, no, I shouldn't have been drunk.
Yeah.
Don't recommend.
I think when it comes down to being drunk, you might think, Yeah.
Yeah, your perception will... Dude, you think you did 70 push-ups?
Yeah.
But actually, you did like 15.
You did 10 good ones and 15 fucking terrible ones.
Yeah.
I don't drink ever, so but I would say personal max, we used to do 120s on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so 120, but it's not a personal... I'm sure I could have done more. Not a ton more, but I think push-ups in particular are pretty good. I feel they're pretty good exercise to burn some calories and, strengthen tendons. But one problem with push-ups, same as bench press, is that there aren't a lot of activities where this occurs in real life. And so
it's not very functional.
It's not super functional, yeah. And so as somebody like to power lift, like to power bench, stuff like that, I still know that it's not super useful. Even in martial arts, there's a lot of grabbing and pulling or pulling. Pushing somebody off you is obviously super, super useful, but we didn't do a ton. But yeah, we do 120.
I'm a little intimidated by your number of push-ups, but let's just move on from that.
I don't know if I can do 120 now. I could do probably 70 easy now, but push-ups, also, I personally think push-ups are hugely mental. Because
really?
When you get to a certain part in push-ups, there's some pain and some joints, and it's a fairly large...
Pushing past the pain.
It's not just stuff, it's shoulder, and then there's something about
just
it that...
systemic fatigue.
Yeah.
Your whole body's kind of
and you'll watch somebody's face change when they get to a point to where it's not fun, whatever, it adds, it compounds, and pain is pain, is pain, is pain, is pain, and it gets worse and worse. But once you do a bunch over a long period of time, that is sticks with you for a long time. Because I've seen people who haven't done push-ups in a long time. That's not a functional thing that they ever do. They stay in general shape. But if we were to say, hey, could you do some push-ups? They would still be able to do quite a number of push-ups because their brain remembers what it was like. There's no psychological, I'm going to get hurt.
So it's the mind-muscle connection.
Yeah, because when something hurts, your brain's telling you it's dangerous. When in real life, a lot of the stuff we do, even stretching, you know how this is. You'll stretch and your body's like, I'm going to break. Realistically, there's a huge amount of stretch potential. but the brain
Yeah.
is like there's new neurons going. No, there's not,
It's,
and you're like, no,
it's
there
shooting
is.
the alarm
Oh
early.
yeah, it's
in a
like
way. Yeah.
hamstring will snap. Hamstring will snap. Burpees are good for cardio. Yeah, burpees are fun. I like I don't know a lot of people who like them, but I love them. Let's see. Next up, we got game. Okay, we talked about next Dark Pictures, Directive 2020. Green Saturn says, "Hey ACG and Johnny, who's your favorite NPC companion in any game?" I'd say Barry Wheeler. The dude was a riot in Alan Wake 1. Yeah, he's very close to my favorite. I think Barry's one of the funniest, best bros in a game ever. He's right up there. What about you?
Tough one. We always talk about Pavardi. Pavardi was an excellent companion in Outer Worlds. I also like Panem in Cyberpunk quite a bit.
Did you feel that Pan Am's... I felt that Pavardi had more of a thing with you that was stretched across that game than... I don't remember a lot of back and forth with Pavardi with Pan Am that wasn't like... I don't know how to describe it, dude. I don't know. I feel like she's there and there was some stuff, but I guess it's not as memorable maybe for me. I don't know why.
Did you romance Panem or no? Yeah, so there is like involvement there, but yeah, there was something really... There was a connection with Pavardi, I thought, like, a banter.
Maybe it was the lack of physicality, and maybe that's why it paid off, because you were like bros from another hoe kind of thing instead of...
It was bros. Yeah, it was more of a bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that paid off
really
well.
Good one.
I know people choose Garrus in Mass Effect, but I'm definitely a Rex. If we're going with the aliens, guys, I liked Rex. I liked his ideas. Garrus never really challenged me in my Mass Effect games, no matter what I did. And Rex's antagonism towards what happened to him as a race made him much more interesting and much more thoughtful. I feel like I get it why people think Garrus... I mean, I would say hands down he would win in like popular and like companions between the two. But to me, Rex was hands down insanely more interesting, because once you learned what happened and the race stuff that happened, everything he did, how he reacted to every single thing
it made sense, right? He was his own person.
It was his own person.
Based on that.
Yeah, there was something about that just, I was like, dude, no matter, and I cared. I don't give a shit about Garrett. I mean, I liked him and he did stuff, but it's like, he'd be all, I don't know if this is the best idea. But Rex would be like, dude, what are you doing? And I do like a person that matches the tenseness of the situation. Garrus didn't match it. Garrus was like the guy who's like, everything's on fire, and he's like, well, I don't know, we should talk about it. Picard almost. I hate the Picards of the world. I like Kirk. I like the guy who punches somebody and then later everybody has to fix it, but he has already taken care of that situation. Rex was like that. Rex matched the emotion. So if it was a big deal, you'd know. You'd be like Rex would just say it. He'd be like, what are we doing, Shepard? This is a bad idea, blah, blah. He'd be, there was something about that I love. I think it speaks to me. Pan Am was a very story-based companion. Man, maybe I just didn't like her story at all. I also felt that in Pan Am, when we did romance her, it just ended. There was something.
Yeah, and after the romance,
it was done. It was like it never happened almost.
We're done.
Yeah, it was weird.
Done.
I think that's why Pan Am or Pavardi worked better, because there was never the post-coital. There was never the should we have done this? You never got to that point. Bitlerist also mentioned my second favorite, which for the rest of my life I think is going to be a top tier character, which is HK-47 in Star Wars. That character was so well written by BioWare. It was so funny, and also wasn't just a funny character. There was actually a reason why things were said that once you get to that point, you're like, damn. Like that.
Is that Knights of the Old Republic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Dude, Meatbag. He is fucking awesome, man. He was awesome. Beastie by Nature says, with creative director of the Super Bowl halftime show with Kendrick Lamar stating they use the PlayStation controller as a reference in the choreography.
Huh.
Wait,
what would that even mean, to use it as a reference? I have
no clue. I have a desperate bid to connect to the new billion of gamers, probably, that you mentioned. whatever.
Yeah.
So with creator director of the Super Bowl halftime show for Kendrick Lamar stating they use the PlayStation controller as a reference in the choreography. What have been some of your favorite crossovers of gaming references in other forms of media, perhaps outside of TV shows? I like that Power Trip by Monster Magnet was about Duke Nukem. Some of the lines. I thought that was pretty funny. I think video games and music, when they overlap, is awesome. And
Yeah.
sometimes you get a hard rock band that'll write a song. You get Miracle of Sound, who did the Valhalla. What was Something Rising? Was it Valhalla Rising? Which I thought was great. I think music is probably my number one. What about you? Is there any? If he says without TV shows, that's pretty rough. That's pretty difficult for me.
Yeah, that's pretty difficult. I think the music one is really good one.
Because there's just the music even showed up in the games in the old days. Fear Factory was in Demolition Racer or one of the Demolition games. You saw already the crossover going this way, but then at some point, magically in the past, I don't know where, we saw musicians writing songs about the game. Like you could tell it would just pop up. And you'd be like, dude, they're talking about a game right now, even if it's just the behind the scenes of it all. Was Monster Magnet in Road Rash? I believe so, but I know a bunch of them were in many racing games. Racing games and hard metal rock have been synonymous with one another. I don't know what this Super Bowl thing is, though. It sort of bothers me because it sounds dumb as shit. Now I want to know. Wait, does he mean when they were dancing, like the people who were set up dancing were in the shape of a PlayStation controller? Is that because he says reference for the choreography? I don't know.
I don't know. I have not seen that.
I don't know. Dude, halftime shows are a nightmare. They're so painful. They're horrendous. Yes, they're so bad. They're usually medleys and montage, all these songs, and they try to mix them and match them. And really what it is let me just show you my top 7 hits because I'm the popular person at this current time.
Is it like those when a celebrity will come on and like sing a song in the stadium, like Bon Jovi or like
sort of, but they'll go halfway through the song and they'll be like "Living on a Prayer," and then somehow they'll be all "It's My Life," and they'll switch over to the other song. And so it really doesn't even feel. It hasn't for years ever felt about the game. It is quite literally, let's go find the popular guy and just have him singing in the center.
Almost like The Rock talking about his new drink.
Dude, that was amazing. Was that the game? Was that the Game Awards when The Rock showed up and just started talking about his drink and forgot what the fuck he was talking about?
Like 2 years ago, but
Yeah, that was crazy. Phoenicia says, "Let me just watch the fucking game." Maybe. Oh, yeah, they're saying the stage was a PlayStation controller. Dario says Eminem made a song "Hellbound" with the Soul Calibur samples. That's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. Didn't think about that. What else we got? Let's look here. Capcom says it's always looking for an opportunity to create a new Akama? Did they spell that wrong? Oh.
You had a thing about Epic Games. I think it was another report with some data.
Yeah, it was another report, but it was just like it was more focused on Epic Games kind of stuff, and it was just talking about the total spins, the total people playing. It was sort of what you were saying with Take-Two. This is the time frame where we get, or 2K.
Yeah.
It's time frame where we get those reports. Really doesn't mean much other than.
So they're saying PC users up to almost 300 million.
300 million. This is the Epic report.
Yeah, from that report.
Let me find it on our Discord and I'll bring it up then. Yeah, there we go. So the thing about the year in review from Epic, and just like I said for the other one, is they a lot of times don't speak to any of us in any way. But yeah, so total PC users 295 million, nearly 898 million Epic cross-platform accounts. Whatever, like not super interesting. 7.72 billion total store gameplay hours, which is up 10%. 2.6 billion third-party gameplay hours, up 11%. 1.9 billion spent by PC players on the Epic Store, up 15%. down 18%, is spent by players on third-party PC games, which that's interesting. 89 games given for free, average score 76%, free games claimed. 595 million total free games have been played.
Damn, that's a lot
Or
of
have
free
been
games,
claimed.
dude.
Yeah. Top titles: Genshin, Rocket League, Star Rail. That's crazy. Two from the same company. Grand Theft Auto,
Oh.
of course, and Fortnite Battle Royale.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think when it comes to what Epic says, what Microsoft says, what Sony says, what Steam says, because they're all from the different platforms, it's great in and of itself, but it doesn't speak towards, it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I don't know who the fuck
I
that is.
don't know.
Oh, I think Hooded Horse might be the guys who did the Manor Lords game that I did the review for the early access. Is that Manor Lords? Yeah. Yeah, I guess so.
It is Manor Lords. You're right.
Yeah. I don't know if they're holding it on their shoulders. I think there's a lot of companies doing strategy games, but I'll tell you what, if you like it, that's awesome. Like, that's great to me. I'm glad you're digging it. A lot of people seem to like that game. I liked it. I thought it was very fun, very enjoyable. Did some cool different things, but I would say, is there a genre that anybody's really? I don't think there's a genre right now that like any one particular group is even. You could have said this 2 years ago. I would have said Sony was third-person big single-player action games. That's completely gone. Racing games sort of split. You got a ton of racing games. Microsoft's definitely got some with your Forza, but you've got PC games. There's like 6 or 7 fairly huge racing PC games, and GT 7, I believe, just broke a record for them, or maybe just sold a bunch. I can't remember, but they're doing fine. Nintendo doesn't have racing game. Well, they have Mario, but I mean Mario Kart. Come on. Who's 2D? It depends on the 2D game. You got a ton of 2D games. I'm trying to think if there's any company really holding up the strap. Okay, I'll say this. Because of the remasters and the remakes, and because they're moving to PlayStation with this game, I do say Microsoft and RTS. Because of Age of was it Mythology, and then Age of Empires 2. No, Age of Wonders is the turn-based one that I like so much. Age of Mythology is the RTS one Microsoft made. Yeah. I was just saying for RT, but I don't think they're holding it on their shoulders. There's other ones, but I do think that they're definitely up there. Let's see. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 was literally the soundtrack of my youth at school.
Yeah, that was it for me as well. Like my teenage years, I listened to a bunch of that.
You mean like while you were playing the game? And
no, outside of game, like the OST was kind of like,
because the OST was reflective of that time frame.
Yeah, and cultural moment with like liking skateboarding with my friends and stuff. So just became a OST for me.
That's so cool, man. I'm like, if I die tomorrow, I'm gonna die pretty fucking happy that like games and music have combined, because like I knew music before I knew games. Most of us probably do, just because of how life works, But
yeah, and so what's cool is now we have some of these iconic OSTs like Ori and the Blind Forest. We were talking about Outer Worlds. A few of these where you listen to like 2 notes and you're instantly
Final Fantasy,
you know it
or whatever.
Yeah, that too. And you just instantly know it, right? It's at that level now.
Yeah, I think it's awesome.
Not every time, but it happens.
We were also talking about games exploding and not being the nerds anymore. I mean, Fallout Season 2 is coming. The Last of Us now looks to be 4 seasons. Like, we actually have TV shows that are good replications.
And they're doing super well, a lot of them.
The good ones. Not Halo.
We don't talk about Halo. No. Never happened.
We don't talk about Halo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to see, man. It's awesome. Like, as somebody who likes all that kind of stuff, it's great to see. Is there any other part of life that you wish got into games? So music got in, voice acting got in, right? So you get these 2 things that were such a big deal to me, at least, that got into games. Sound is getting a huge, we're starting to have all this stuff
Mm.
on sound. Is there any other part of life? Is there even another part of life that, I mean, writing's getting better. Writing's always been good in games, or it could be good depending on
Right.
who. But is there any other aspect of life that like needs to get into games? I don't even think there is. I think that's
No, I think you're spot on. The thing though that could maybe improve is the just nuances
mm,
with relationships with characters in games and the way that people react and their ability to take in different things that you've done or said in the past to alter, maybe just change the tone. I mean, imagine if we have the ability to like take a recorded line and maybe shift something about it. So I'm just thinking out loud. This might be a terrible idea, but imagine you have a recorded line for a sentence, but that there is an ability to maybe change that
inflection.
inflection so that it's delivered with
Oh,
maybe disdain
yeah.
if that person now
Mm.
doesn't like you, or the opposite, right? Like friendliness or warmth. And these would be subtle, but it would be a big change. You would have the feeling that, yeah, this person doesn't like me. And it would make sense why, because you probably made certain decisions that they dislike.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to AI and adding AI voice, I know,
Yeah, like
you, you have people fight
modulation
it,
or
but
something.
modulation of
Yeah.
those voices, I think many actors might be more okay with before we get to the full
Yeah,
Monty.
that's why
Yeah.
I hesitated,
Yeah, I know
because
what
I
you're
know
talking
it's
about.
there's gonna be trepidation on, is it okay to take those voices and then play around with them or not? Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of, it's like the word fuck. You can use it like 65 different ways.
Yeah.
But I mean, asking somebody how they are with a question versus
Mm.
like a sarcastic, like, how are you? Or how are you? There's like 16 ways to do that.
Yep.
Obviously, each language will be different. There's some
Or
inflections that
like,
don't work that way.
wish you hadn't done that, or wish you hadn't done that.
Yeah.
Happy versus annoyed type thing.
Or wish you hadn't done that, but delivered in a way to where you absolutely know that it's a bad guy telling you that he's going to kill you.
Yeah, there you go.
Which is done in movies and in games all the time, where it's like, I wish you hadn't done that. And you're like, okay, that guy,
Yeah.
I'm for sure getting attacked. And
Uh,
that's the thing about, you could have somebody deliver it 100 different ways, obviously, but I do think that that's one place where I think people might be cooler with it, because a lot of games modulate stuff anyway. Music already.
Yep.
You have people, the composer many times is not the person who's entering and adjusting the stingers. And when they add, you have different ways, different software, depends on the composer, if they're the full guy who does everything, or if they're the guy that delivers it, and then the sound producer. I would love to see that kind of stuff. We'll just,
Yeah,
have to see.
it would be a way of making more with the same
Yeah.
source material. And as long as you're compensating people appropriately and all that, like, I think that actors would just be okay with that if they don't have to repeat the same line in
Or
20 different ways.
maybe.
Okay, or
Like,
yeah.
like more apt to be slightly okay with
Yeah.
that versus, because also there's 1,000 layers of nuance, and at some point you have to be like, dude, why don't you deliver it with the 9 basic layers, and then we'll use that and slightly adjust it to the 9. I mean, because you already have resampled voices and stuff in games
Or
anyway.
dude, even things like if you're running, you sound different
Yeah.
than if you're walking. We saw this in Spider-Man. If
Spider-Man.
he's swinging, they did it super well.
They did it very well.
Those adjustments would be awesome. Like, what if you're in pain because you're hurt, so now you speak a bit differently? Just so many things like that.
You know what I would like to see, man? Here's some stuff. Let's talk about shit we want to see in games. Just blathering. I'd like to see injuries better reflected in games, to where a character either is fine until they die, which I hate. So they got 99 hit points. They're fine. They look normal. Everything's normal. Then they go to 1 and they're immediately
Mosquito
either
bite,
hurt or they're
dead.
dead.
Yeah, they're dead.
I'd like to also see somebody who, when they fall and trip, they don't always just grab their side, which is a very typical animation in games, where it's like the person grabs their side and walks slowly. I'd also like to never see somebody do this again when they're talking on the radio.
Yeah.
Fucking, what'd you say? Everything slows down. It's like, dude, I can fucking sprint and talk on the phone. Am I going to make a ton of sense?
We can chew
Maybe
gum and
not, but you
walk.
can chew.
Yeah.
Yeah. And these are battle hardened guys. Gears of War. Dom here.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, fuck, whatever. Dom, shut the fuck up. Just move. Little idiosyncrasies like that. I would love to see less of this when you weapon switch. I get really tired of.
Yeah.
Also, you talked about it earlier, different weapons. Whatever weapon I have on my character as a playable weapon, I want to see on the character. So if I have a sword and a bow in one outfit and then 2 swords in the other, it's on you.
Yeah.
I want to see them all on my character when I run around. Clipping, I want clipping to be fixed.
Dude,
games
we
where
haven't fixed clipping yet.
Fixed clipping.
You still have your cape over the sword and like.
Dude, yeah. Or the hairdo, where you're like, dude, that hairdo, you had that hairdo 6 months into the game.
Yeah, the hair is going through the helmet.
Yeah.
Like.
Also, I would love to see, so I was talking about this last night, I would love to see hairdos that were adjustable now, which we saw a little bit. I believe it might have been Wukong, but I could be wrong on that. There was a game that allowed you to adjust the fullness of hair and add ponytails to it. And I want to see almost a modular hair system in games. So if I make a female character in a game, or male, whatever, but with long hair, I want to be able to add a braid, be able to ponytail, be able to, I like the idea. And I think we're far past where that should have already been done, because I was playing Avowed.
Right.
And there's like 17 hairdos, 2 or 3 are what I would style as like for my female character. And the rest were like sort of
unusable.
generos, or they were just generic. And it's like, that would be one thing. Adding volume, I think would be huge.
I never understood why you need to pick the whole thing. Why can't I have this ponytail?
Yeah.
Why am I locked into the bangs?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Avowed's got one where the bangs are the typical, like, I'm too cool for school Japanimation hair, where it's over your eye. And you're like, dude.
The edgy one?
Yeah, it might look cool for a second, but after a while, you're like, oh, it'd be a little bit better if there was some, eye showing. Yeah, I think hair. What are other ones?
Good.
Capes. I would like to see, no
bring back
clipping on
capes.
No, I just want to see no clipping on them. If you're going to put a cape in a game.
clipping is really bad.
Well, it's like, hey, and they give you the item to put on. So they're telling you this item is cool.
Yeah.
You get it sometimes if you buy a game monetization. They give you a cape that clips. It's like, here is the worst burger ever. Thanks for $6.
Yeah.
It makes no
It's
fucking
like,
sense.
we know it's clipping. Yeah. Because obviously they know.
And I say it makes no sense. Of course it's programming. I do know it makes sense. It's hard to do, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying
it's hard to do.
Perfect world, I would like these to be fixed.
Yeah, but I mean, there's so many things like that.
Keep going. What are just small stuff?
Your steps on a ladder. Very often your feet are clipping into the stairs, right? The
or
staircase.
Steps, where your character's
steps. Or like, just a lot of games don't have the feeling of weight. Your character seems like they're floating on the world. Let's be honest, Dark Souls, you're pretty much floating on the world. Or
where the
I would
jump,
like to see that sense of weight.
The jump is up, and then they bend their legs, and you're like, dude, nobody's got a vertical leap just from their ankles like that.
It's like the world is jumping away from you. A lot of those things, man.
Yeah, the little idiosyncrasies. I agree with the footstep thing. Also, I love it when a game does the different audio effect right and left foot if you're on different material, like Witcher. If you're on the ice, you'll hear the crunch on the right.
Yeah, like a little puddle here. You'll listen. Yeah, you'll find it.
Let's see. What other things that just, it would be great to see them fixed. I would say this. In games where there's interactivity, I would like to see even more. I see the mods that come up for Red Dead that add like idle animations at a fence and stuff. They add, and instead, most games, it's like you can sit down on a stool. You can do this, you can do that. And I would like to see that kind of stuff. But Norby says, saw a video how much more detailed games 15 years ago were than now. We didn't focus much on as somebody who's lived through that, boy, I don't believe that. I believe there were very detailed games back then, and there are very detailed games now. That sounds like a YouTube video where it's like, look, I'm going to tell you how every single thing was more detailed back then. It's like, dude, I lived through it, and I still play those games. You're full of shit. Like, the breadth of games, if you play more than 5 games, Assassin's Creed Valhalla won't be the worst game you played in that year. Like, at
dude,
some
what if
point,
you had...
branch out.
what? Sorry, I just something occurred to me,
No, go ahead.
and this could be the worst idea after Smell-O-Vision, but what if you had every time you're up against a really powerful enemy and you're like super scared, the way the game would show that is you either enter fight or flight, where you're panicking, you lose your ability to like use your special moves and stuff because you're just panicking. The best you can do is run away.
Right.
Or you enter like adrenaline mode and you're actually stronger, you're faster, you can see stuff almost in slow-mo.
I could see it if it based the game on that. I wouldn't want all games to do it, but I could see a game like Fear or something like that where...
Because I could see it pissing me off. Like,
I
dude,
could see it, exactly. Exactly. But if it's I mean, so, for example, there's a poker game on the Xbox original, the old one. And in it, you bought skills for your character. And if you didn't buy the steady player skill, your hands would shake if you were faking. So if you were trying to bluff and you didn't have that skill, and a lot of people love the idea, but a lot of people hated it because it wasn't the skill of the player anymore. It was an RPG style thing where they were being penalized for that. I liked it. I thought it was cool because it was different. But that's the problem is that this happened just recently. I saw somebody, they were like, hey, look at, like, you can chop somebody was saying something about like Kingdom Come. You can chop a cup off a table or something. Why can't you do this in some other game? And I'm like, because they're not this, like, I don't understand why we have to get to this point to where it's like, because they're not the fucking same game. Like, one game is massive, looks amazing, does this thing over here incredibly well, but it's super slow. Everything is delivered at a certain speed. Its rendering engine works a certain way. This game over here does these things different. Why in the hell is there an expectation? Because, Johnny, if the expectation is that every game is better than every other game, we would be done with games by the end of this year. Like, you would be done.
Yeah.
You would be like, well, this game has this. Cups now have to be choppable in every game as of this day. Boom. Has to interact. Okay. Every game has to have that. Well, this game, I like this over here. Every game has to have that. By the end of this year alone, all the examples that we would have, we would effectively be done. There would be no way to... You would have exhausted your resources, and you would have exhausted any options because there's so many games. It's like, especially if you play a breadth of games. If you play 7 games, great, whatever. But yeah, it's an odd discussion. It's very weird, too, because in books, if I have a really good author who writes a very good character, am I going to just say, I could read this other book, but, you know, instead I'm going to go back and read this other one for the 55,000th fucking time? Of course not.
Yeah.
Like, of course not. That legitimately makes no sense at all. And you can want this book or whatever to have the writing of the other one, but you should also be able to parse it for whatever it is. And its writer.
Yep.
And the honest truth is, skill is a big deal in writers, just like in developers. The skill may not be there. It's not always lazy devs. It's not always evil publishers.
Not everybody can get, you know, the RTX mode that also performs great.
I mean, Johnny, if it were the other way around, there'd only be gold medals.
There would only be
gold medals. There wouldn't be silver or bronze. It would be so fucking weird.
We can see that problems are not solved in a way where when one game gets something right, every other game after gets that same thing right as well.
Yeah.
So you could think about anything, you know, this game solved movement really well, or this game solved, you know, a particular thing really well. That doesn't mean other games that come after automatically can just copy paste that and get that for free. You know, like it's all dynamic, and you can't just repeat past successes on things.
Not only that, if we could, and I'm the first person who would love this, that would mean if I do a good video, my next video would be gooderest, and they would all be, that's quite literally not how it works at all, and it never will. It's a very odd thing. That doesn't mean you don't want improvements, and it doesn't mean that when you look at a game, you're like, oh, I wish this could happen. But at some point, you do have to understand that, like, resources, talent is a big deal. I would also go so far as to say, if all this were true, every game's soundtrack would have started really good back in the Sega Genesis Phantasy Star whatever days and would have just consistently got better, and we wouldn't have seen new people come in who do not have the talent of, not to, be, this is just a name I'm dropping, but Austin Wintory. So sometimes they'll have a game where you're like, oh, this game's music isn't really for me, like I did with Avowed. That doesn't mean the next game won't be for me. It doesn't mean there won't be improvement, but you can't just ignore everything they're doing and be like, we're going to wait till you're at 99%. Like, what the fuck kind of, it just makes no sense, man. Again, it doesn't mean I don't want to see stuff fixed. I don't like Unreal stutter. It doesn't mean that, and when I see a game where there's no Unreal stutter, I want every game to have no Unreal stutter. Like,
right. So that's an example, right?
That's a technical,
if a game
specific thing
doesn't have the stutter, they worked around that problem. That doesn't mean that now it's a solved problem where no other game will ever have that again. It just doesn't work that way.
It doesn't, because also gamers hate repetition. And one of the few ways to have that solved would be to do the identical style game with the identical resources and the identical memory footprint from that point on, which we wouldn't want either.
Yeah.
It sucks, but that's the way it is. As somebody who played Morrowind just recently, by the way, let's go way back in time, and Daggerfall recently, dude, such a good reminder of, like, people will say, oh man, back in the days of Morrowind, and I was playing Morrowind going, back in the days, man, there's so much shit in this game. And I'm not talking about graphics or physics. I'm talking about they had the exact same, every single location would load, every, like, things that we don't see in many games. You're playing these games and it's like people will be like, oh man, Morrowind. And by the way, Morrowind's one of my favorite of all time, but I know what the fucking problems are. And I'm all, do you know how they got away with this other thing? Because every fucking place loads, or there's this, or there's that. It's like, dude, there's trade-offs for everything, but that doesn't fit it. Nobody wants to see that on YouTube. Nobody wants to see that real life's on YouTube. They want a drawn, definitive line. Good, bad. We lived in good times, but the rose-tinted glasses are fucking real, man. You go back. I mean,
it's all trade-offs. Yeah. And sometimes, like you said, some people are just better, man. Like, some people are legit.
It's sad to say, but some people are just. If you got, dude, there's some developers that,
with the same time, they can make a better game.
Yeah. Vapor Blood says, I hate Ubisoft has the same UI aesthetic look. Cool. Let's see. Moving on from there, what else do we got? We got weapon stuff. I like to see good hit elements, and we still don't see that in every game. I know in Avowed,
there
they
is something.
seem to work a long time for that. Go ahead.
We're talking about, like, seeing more stuff in games. I would love to see more heist plot games.
Oh, I do like myself a good heist plot.
There's something about a heist plot, and it's not just a heist. It's you're always building a team.
Mm-hmm.
And you're getting, like, specialists. You're getting, like, the guy who's really good at this one thing that you need for the job. And then, you're going to a different place to recruit him.
So
and now he doesn't want to, because maybe he hates you from a past job. But, you do something to get him on board, right?
Yep.
And there's so many cool little subplots
Ocean's
that come
13,
out of that.
Ocean's 11 kind of stuff.
Yeah, Ocean's 11. And then, like, at the end, you have this bonded team that's, like, it's been bonded in the fires of whatever. Just because of the adversity that they face in the heist, inevitably they come together, and by the end they're like, they're really close.
Bitler says really all studios should band together and make one game. I feel like I agree in a weird way, but not every. But I actually agree, because my personal belief is, when I look at Mario versus Rabbids. Sorry, I think that's an amazing game made by two companies that put their shit away for a small amount of time, and you just so rarely really get that. Cross IP is just not a thing that we get very often, unless it's a Smash Brothers style thing or something like that.
Yeah,
and I'd love to see, because they did. I mean, other than Gears of War Tactics, I don't think I've seen a game where the IP made sense once I played it and made me go, holy shit. Like, that makes a ton of sense. It actually works. Like, Mario's like movement works when it comes to pipes. They did a good job. Gears of War, I swear to God, when I played Gears of War, especially because you had the timing of the reload, and then in the game you have it all felt like almost like I was playing a up view looking down. Those kind of things. I like the cross gen stuff and the cross genre stuff and the cross team stuff. I'd like to see more of that. Mindgate Conspiracy is a good game, Solar says. People don't realize this, but like I don't know how Solar does because he's so much younger than me, but he's played a lot of the old games I've played. We end up talking about a rant, but if nobody's played PsyOps, that game is fantastic. That's like straight up old though. That's like PS2 Xbox, right? Because there was PsyOps and there was PsyOps. Yeah. Man, that's an old game. Yeah, PsyOps was awesome. Somebody mentioned Mass Effect, Johnny. I think Mass Effect 2's heist. Because the entire game, that entire game is really about setting up your team. So I think that's why it speaks to a lot of people.
Yeah, a little bit. And GTA 5, that was kind of like a heist with Michael.
I feel like you just came into my brain because that was the next game I was going to mention. I feel the same way.
There you go.
Not even an online where I know that's a thing. I'm talking about in the game. It was a heist that had gone wrong. And then it was about a heist trying to get right. And it felt just like Ocean's 11, where they're like, well, let's get Bobby. I don't know. Remember what happened last time with Bobby? And you're like, yeah, but he's the only guy who can hack a level 30,000 safe.
He's the best guy for this.
He's the best guy. We gotta, and that, he's drunk and there's prostitutes everywhere. And you're like shooing him away so you can get it.
You have to put up with all these quirks.
He's gained 300 pounds and you're originally planning on him going through the air duct. And so that's why those fucking games, like when they work well, they work really well. And I think a lot of, I'm not going to say devs, that's not fair. I think that people mistake GTA for the open worldness and they forget that there's some pretty intelligent story. There's a storyline that's pretty fucking intelligent. And then they build the game on that. I mean, the satire and stuff, hard to hit. And, they're phenomenal. Like
it's really a combination, isn't it, of all those things working together? But I agree. It's not just the open world.
If it was, then we see Saints Row would have been good. Yeah,
that's what I was gonna say. Funny enough, if it was just the open world, it would be much easier to replicate.
We'd be playing Saints Row 6, right? But clearly that's hard. Yeah, being a dev would be super rough because you're being held. You're playing a game. You want to put it in. You're like, man, I want to put this in the game, but I just don't have the resources. And I know people are going to want it, but we can't. So let's try to do this. And trying to put all that together, like, dude, it's got to be, man, I can't even think. And it's interactive too, which means you can deliver somebody a title that is good, but if they choose to play it in a way that like doesn't equal whatever, they can just say they hate it, and you're like, damn. It's like, it's right there. Well, I've chosen not to do that. And because I chose not to do it, the rest of the game didn't feel good to me. So therefore I don't like it. And you're like, all right. That's gotta be rough as shit, man. I'm glad I'm just a YouTuber. Cause like I can react to things and then move on and not have to be saddled with a game. Like, let's say a game does well, but it's got issues stalker. That's got to be a hard one because the excitement of the release is done. The people have moved on. You're in not maintenance. You're in fix it for the people who want to play it, but it's always going to go down mode, which is weird. It's almost like the after party where you're cleaning up and talking to your friends about how cool the party prior was, which is sort of depressing. If you've ever been at a big party and everybody's cleaning up and they're still having fun, but most cool people have left, you've got the other guys there and you're cleaning up and you're having a little bit of the cake afterwards. And you're like, man, did you see Johnny, man? He did that backflip. That was funny. And everybody laughs a little bit, but you all know that sooner or later the door's going to open and everybody's going to leave. That's the way it feels in patch mode for these guys. That would suck. Me and a friend loved playing the old Ghost Recon games on Xbox. Yeah, those were good. Those were definitely good. What else do we got? Anything? Let's finish this up with some science. Or something.
What do you got? Okay.
I don't know if I really have anything this week. I haven't got a chance to listen to any science. I was imbibing a ton. I was just playing the shit out of the games. I'm rewatching Expanse, but it's good to rewatch because it's got some cool special effects and I can ignore it when I need to. So I've just been watching that.
I watched a pretty cool movie, funny enough, on Apple TV. I know we always shit on Apple TV for the pacing of stuff.
A 2-hour movie that took 7 hours in your brain. I'm just joking.
Yeah.
What was it?
Dude, it's funny because I thought it was a show, and then that fit perfectly because I just felt like it's endless. This episode will never
Jesus Christ.
end.
Yeah, where's the
But
end?
it was a full arc.
Well,
it's called The Gorge, and it's a movie.
You watched
with,
that? Because I got to see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a movie with
Teller,
Queen's
right?
Gambit lady.
Queen's Gambit lady. Yep.
And
Ann Taylor,
Whiplash
whatever her name is.
Guy.
Yeah. Miles Teller.
Yes. Miles Teller, thank you. So those two are great in it. It's I won't say too much because it will kind of blow up the the surprises and stuff.
Okay.
But it is about a physical gorge on the earth. So it's kind of like a fissure. And imagine two big towers on either side of the fissure looking at each other. And Miles Teller is in one, and then the girl is in another. And the whole idea is that one side is United States and the other one is
Russia, right?
I think Lithuania or Russia or something.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so and this situation, and then there's a cool mystery at the bottom of the gorge. And then, it goes from there. But pretty well done. I actually enjoyed it.
I saw the trailer about a month and a half ago and was in the Discord going, dude, I cannot wait to watch this movie because it looks, like, a goofy, doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's got a little bit of cosmic horror, world horror in there. So I'm all for that, alien horror, what have you. I like her. I like him. The idea that they both signed off of it after doing incredibly high, critically acclaimed shows is also cool. That's why I like Keanu Reeves, man. Show up in something and you're like, dude, what is this shit? Like, what are you doing? It's not a Nicolas Cage that I know what he's doing. It's everything. Keanu Reeves will make choices. And you're like, what the fuck?
He saw something interesting.
And so the fact that she came from that and he came from Whiplash. I mean, he came from Top Gun too, but Top Gun's one of the top grossing movies of all time.
Yeah, he did great in Top Gun too.
He's doing okay.
Yeah.
And they both come together and go, I got an idea. Monsters in a gorge, 2 superpowers with snipers, whose only job is to somehow stop a mile-long gorge, like monsters coming from the gorge. Go. And they both were like...
Monsters from the gorge. It's cool, man. Yeah, it's cool.
Maybe one of them liked it, and then maybe somebody read the script and called and said, I heard you're attached to this. I want to, let's work together, because they're both actors. It could possibly be where they've known each other. I don't know. But it just seems... Yeah. That's a fucking odd one. I
always like thinking that actors get excited. They read the script, or they're aware of the story, and they just get excited to do something.
You and I are both of the nostalgic. We want bands to get along if they're touring for 20 years. It would be nice if people, because to me that's an adventure. If
people are happy and just driven.
Well, it's like how we handle the podcast. If I didn't like you, one of us wouldn't be here, right? You're hoping that exists everywhere.
Years ago.
Yeah. And that idea is awesome. The gorge I want to see really bad. So would you say scale of 1 to 10 or A stars, by, touch, don't touch, fondle, finger slightly? What would you rate?
I would give it a really solid Yeah.
Gentle fingering?
Yeah, I think fondle is a good one. Yeah, I think a good liberal fondling.
Liberal. That's wrong.
Yeah. Out of 10. Yeah, I think a solid 8 out of 10.
Okay. 8 out of 10?
Yeah,
What?
I think so, man.
Really? Okay, cool. I'm excited, man. Now,
because it was easy to watch.
All right.
Didn't ask a lot of me, but at the same time surprised me in some ways. It was really easy on the eye, so great production. The actors are great. They look great. They do a great job. Special effects are good. It surprised me that they actually do quite a lot of physical stunts. Obviously, they have doubles, I imagine, but it's convincing. Some of the moves and stuff. I was really compelled, man. I liked it.
Bitlerus says, does it jiggle your juices? I also want to point out, speaking of effects and stunts that either look good, you can't tell it's the other that it's not the actor, what have you, that are good.
Yeah.
I still have a soft spot for a movie that is not great, but I have a super soft spot for it due to the way they edited it and also the actress continually doing most of the stunts, and that's Atomic Blonde, which is what's her name? Not from Aeon Flux is the movie, but Sharon.
Charlize Theron.
The fights were better than I expected. In a lot of fight scenes, you'll see, I guess I would say, you can tell the person's going to block something. The frame is wrong, and you can see it.
Right.
And in that one, I felt like overall they did a really good job, and her moves were pretty guttural, which I like, especially when it's a smaller, diminutive, less strong fighter. I think that's the person that Ronda Rousey's somebody. And that's what they should do, is do stuff that works for their body style and not... I like Jet Li, but when I watch The Expendables and Jet Li's sparring Dolph Lundgren, I'm like, okay, dude, there's like, we gotta...
Yeah, there's some thresholds
There's
here.
a threshold
like,
that... Yeah. And so they did a really good job of watching her do that and go, okay, they did a good job with the moves.
Yeah, that looks convincing.
And it looked, and I would say, in a way, many times when you see Keanu in the John Wick movies, not all the time, because it got a little stretchy, but in a lot of those, they do a good job with him using things around the world or whatever to make sure that it's a more even fight if he's fighting somebody big or he's fighting multiple people. I like that kind of stuff. Atomic Blonde was fun. Really good music too. That's the thing,
I was gonna say
good
that's
music.
a recent movie, but actually it's almost 10 years ago.
10 years, yeah.
It's like,
yeah, she did a stunt that involves her, the stupidest stunt in the world. You see it all the time, where somebody like jumps off of something with a rope attached and they don't break their back or separate their fucking torso from the rest of their body, which is what had happened. But they did it in a way that it looked less jerky and more like a swing. And I remember appreciating it, going, it's not like when in Star Wars, when somebody falls off a ledge and they grab a ledge at 300 miles an hour and you know that their fingertips would explode and they just stop the frame. And I'm not saying everything needs to be realistic. I'm saying we've seen movies that have done a cut that worked better. They cut well in Atomic Blonde. So yeah, 10 years, man.
There were just some things about their movement. They're both really good in it, and surprised me because Queen's Gambit lady, Anna Taylor-Joy. Yeah, because I knew her from Queen's Gambit, so to see her in an action thing was awesome. I didn't know she had this, like there's one where she takes a fire extinguisher and there's a fire up like on a tree. So she tosses the fire extinguisher on top of a roof, then leaps onto the roof, picks it up as it's like falling down.
Oh, I gotcha.
There's something about the fluidity of
So throws it up, it's rolling down, she leaps up and grabs it before it falls.
Grabs it, uses it immediately.
Yep.
There's something, it's really well done how they do everything there.
That kind of stuff, the secondary thinking is sort of like because in most movies somehow she would get up there with it and you're like, okay, if anybody's carried a fire extinguisher, they're beyond heavy. It's ridiculous. Like you see a movie where a guy's swinging it, you're like, even if it was empty, that's not, you guys don't understand, like especially the big ones in movies. So the idea that she throws it up and it's moving and then she gets up there to grab it before, that's the kind of odd editing that I think if it's done right works really well. It made
sense, like damn, that was a good movement.
That's cool. That's cool.
That's
good.
I
want to see it. Man.
It's good.
Dario says, A History of Violence, Cronenberg and Viggo Mortensen action is not a lot, but the most impactful I've seen in any movie. Boy, that's a long time ago. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I always think of like Lord of the Rings and then realize how old it is. Viggo in particular is what I mean. I see him and I think that's who he looks like, and then I see him now and I'm all, that was
holy shit,
25
it's been
years
a
ago.
Generation.
Yeah. Two and a half. It's crazy how old those are. Let's see. Anything else before we wrap it up? I don't have any science. Yeah, man. There's no. I didn't read any weird stories about people dying and seeing dark figures at their bed or anything.
No
horror stuff. I'm doing the Magnus Chronicles, which is one of those audio dramas about like an organization and secret, items and all that kind of stuff. It's been going for like 2,000 years, I feel like. But I started listening to that. There really had. Oh, by the way, nope, can't say that. You will see some reviews from me though coming up next week. I'll just say that. Yeah, that's about it. What are you streaming this week?
Awesome. I don't know if I'm streaming too much because I am playing that NDA game, and I'm trying to sink some hours into that. I think I'm just gonna do some league streams for fun with the community because people who watch can get in there, play with us. We usually have a good time, listen to some music and stuff like that. So that's pretty much the main thing I got going on.
We're going to go see, and I know it didn't get rated well, we're going to go see Captain America, and I could say 80% of the reason I'm going is popcorn.
Yeah.
I'm like...
I mean, those are great for that. Man.
Yeah, it's not even the best popcorn, but it's like some just going disconnecting because it is so busy right now. Like,
do you have it like really overpriced popcorn too over there or no?
They're fairly... Well, you get a lot. See, that's what's weird. You know how in movie theaters you go and a Snickers bar is like $75, and you're like, okay, but it's the same Snickers bar. Here, the popcorn is so big that it's actually way larger than I would ever in a million years eat in one. It's a massive amount. So yes, it's expensive.
Okay, I think that's an America thing because here you're paying like a full $5 for the tiniest.
At least at my theater, it's like. It might be 5 or 7, but it's so big, at least to me, there's so much there that there's no, like, it's probably the most cost-effective volume, if you're hungry, that you can do. On the other hand, I have a tendency, because I'm always joking in a theater before the movie, that I'll buy, like, chocolates, and then almost every single time I leave the theater, I'll have, like, a chocolate stuck on my arm or whatever, because I'll be throwing them at my wife or throwing them at my friends in the theater. I'm not throwing them. I'm not being a jackass. I'm not throwing them at other people, but, like, I'm always messing around. So I always have to watch what I'm eating. Popcorn, I'm always throwing it at my wife, sticking it in her hair. Admittedly, I'm probably not the best person to go see a movie with, because, like, I'll sit still during the movie, but prior to the movie, I'm like, dude, let's get this thing going. And I can't roll in late either. Like a lot of people say, why don't you roll in? Because you buy the seat now. You don't have to stand in line. I used to love standing in line for movies, by the way, because that was excitement of it. But now that you go in, people will be like, why don't you just walk in? I like to see the trailers too. I admit I'm a sucker for...
I missed that.
Maria Menounos will be out there talking about like being quiet during the movie, and I'll be like, anything for you. You're talking directly to me. What were you gonna say? Sorry,
I missed that part because I haven't gone to the cinema in a while now, and I usually watch stuff at home, which is pretty much a better experience all around. But I do miss the being in the cinema and randomly catching a trailer of something you didn't expect or. That was surprising. That was really cool. And you go, whoa, okay.
I admit I'm a sucker for I'm a sucker when people are having a good time. So I do like the theater. I mean, I love my house, obviously, but I'm always there.
Yeah.
So the idea of going to a theater, even though it's expensive, well, it's not that expensive, actually, especially if you look at renting a movie that just came out. It can be quite expensive to stream it. Like they charge a good amount of money to stream a brand new movie. So going to the theater and having a good time and hearing people like something, that to me is always awesome, man. It's I don't know. There's something about like when people Deadpool, Wolverine, hearing the audience go like, "What the?" To me, that was the magic. That was awesome. I like that. I like when people enjoy stuff. It's that kind of stuff is super awesome. But again, your house is always better because you just sit in your boxers and you fucking make some popcorn. I don't know.
What if you want to take a break and like get some, some chips?
Tell them to stop the theater movie. Be like, stop
the theater.
Anyway,
I need more Skittles.
I need more, dude. Yeah, we always need more Skittles. That'll be it for Johnny and I. Thank you guys. If you get a chance, I would love for you to become a YouTube member. It helps the channel, as you guys know. Even if we disagree, even if you hate me, still, I'm not taking money from anybody. Well, other than people who join Patreon or become a YouTube member, now that I think about it. But it helps the channel immensely, and it helps me continue to review games in ways that you'll hate, and you'll say that you don't agree with me. So it's a never-ending circle of shit. So if you want to join the never-ending circle of shit, join our Patreon. Dude, I think I just sold it. Everybody's going to join.
Absolutely.
Dude, I sell it well. I mean, I got to give myself a pat on the back. That was the easiest. That was the best sell right there. I can
Bring your
sell
own
cars.
Skittles.
Bring your own
because
Skittles.
no one
Do
will
all your
share
own shit.
Yep.
Bring your own movie to the theater day. That's the patron. Anyway, that'll be it for us, everybody. I hope you enjoy your week. Thanks to Johnny for always showing up. Peace out and enjoy your Valentine's Day if you celebrate.
Bye-bye, everybody. Happy Valentine's.